السلام عليكم everybody.
وعليكم السلام دكتور جابر. You are welcome.
عليكم السلام والرحمة والإكرام. أهلا وسهلا دكتور. أهلا بالجميع.
حياك الله دكتور عبد الرؤوف والجميع. دكتور سمير حياكم الله.
الله يبارك فيك. أهلين أهلين
دكتور محسن
أهلا وسهلا.
كيف حالكم جميعا؟
الله يبارك فيك.
الحمد لله.
الله يكرمكم يا رب. حياكم الله.
الله يبارك فيك. أهلين
دكتور محسن.
تحياتي للجميع. نحن الآن على بث مباشر على صفحة المركز على الفيسبوك.
الله يكرمكم. حياكم الله.
مساء الخير، أهلا وسهلا بالجميع. أسعد الله أوقاتكم جميعا.
أهلا دكتور صهيب، مرحبا.
على بث مباشر على صفحة المركز على الفيسبوك.
السجان
ثالث كلمة بعد التيتر. افتح انت الكاميرا مش نعرف كيف نطلع في الكاميرا.
دكتور صهيب. دكتور صهيب.
انتبهوا المرش.
لا
صح ولا
لا هي السلام عليكم.
حتى هذا يتوخر شوية.
دكتور سمير راح يكون معنا الدكتورة مبروك عثمان وزيرة الثقافة.
السلام عليكم.
السلام باشمهندس. الدكتورة مبروك راح تكون معنا وزيرة الثقافة في ليبيا. نعم.
السلام عليكم.
السلام. أهلا وسهلا بالجميع.
ما شاء الله.
استاذ طارق تسمع فيها؟
معك يا باشمهندس.
الوزيرة ان شاء الله جاهزة ان شاء الله بتلقي الكلمة ان شاء الله.
تمام تمام.
بارك الله فيكم فيها وإن شاء الله.
صوت واضح ان شاء الله.
يا ما شاء الله ما شاء الله.
تمام، صوت واضح ما شاء الله، صوت واضح. تمام.
تبدأ ان شاء الله البداية.
احنا طبعا بنبدأ بالكلمات الافتتاحية، الترحيب بالضيوف. ان شاء الله حتكون اول كلمة لكلمة سيادة الوزيرة ان شاء الله. لكن طبعا ضروري من الترحيب بالضيوف حتكون طبعا بكلمة اللجنة التحضيرية وكلمة المركز، وبصفتنا رئيس المؤتمر سألقي كلمة ترحيب، وبعدها مباشرة حتبدأ إن شاء الله سيادة الوزيرة تفتتح المؤتمر إن شاء الله تعالى.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. دكتور يوسف فينا نبلش؟ هاي الدكتور عبد الرؤوف جاهز.
خامسة خلاص نبدأ ببركة الله إن شاء الله.
دكتور عبد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميعا. إن شاء الله نبدأ المؤتمر على بركة الله. دكتور عبد الرؤوف. دكتور عبد الرؤوف 3 2 1 على بركة الله، تفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وعلى بركة الله نبدأ. وأسعد الله مساءكم جميعا، وأهلا وسهلا بكم ضيوفا أعزاء كرام وأكارم من كافة أقطار الوطن العربي والعالم أجمع. نحييكم من قلب فلسطين النابض، من الوطن العروبة، من الجرح النازف، من الساكن في سويداء كل عربي وإسلامي، من القدس الشريف. طبعا يشرفنا الأستاذ الدكتور سمير النجدي من يسكن في يعني رحاب الأقصى المبارك. بداية السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، والصلاة والسلام على رسل الله أجمعين. وبعد، يقول تعالى: وهل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون؟ ويقول شاعر العرب أبو تمام بتصرف: سأجهد حتى أبلغ العلم شاءه، وإن كان لي طوعا ولست بجاهدي. الحضور الكرام والأكارم، الضيوف، أعضاء الشرف، لجنة الشرف، مع حفظ الألقاب والمسميات، سلام من الله عليكم ورحمة منه وبركات. وبعد، بتنظيم من المركز الديمقراطي العربي في برلين، وبالتعاون مع جامعات عربية عدة، جامعة القدس المفتوحة من فلسطين، وجامعتي بنغازي وطرابلس من ليبيا، وجامعة الموصل من العراق، وجامعة منوبة من تونس، وبحضور مميز لوزيرة الثقافة الليبية التي نرحب بها أجمل ترحيب، وبمشاركة علماء أجلاء متحدثين مختصين في مجال اللغة الإنجليزية، ينعقد المؤتمر العلمي الافتراضي الدولي الأول الموسوم بالواقع والتجارب والتحديات والعلاجات المتعلقة بتعليمية اللغة الإنجليزية وتعلمها في مجالي الترجمة والأدب ما بعد جائحة كورونا. ينعقد في ظل ظروف غاية في التعقيد على الصعيد العالمي بعامة والعربي بخاصة. تعرض العالم بأسره إلى هجوم وباء أشغل العالم وعطل عجلات الاقتصاد والتعليم والصحة والمسائل الاجتماعية وغير ذلك، وبفعله وبأثره تعطلت الجامعات وأقفلت المدارس وأصيب الاقتصاد العالمي في مقتل، مما فرض على المهتمين والمختصين في مجال التعليم التفكير مليا حول وضع العلاجات التي تضمن الاستمرارية في المجالات المختلفة لا سيما التعليمية منها. ويأتي هذا المؤتمر ليعالج تلك التحديات التي فرضت نفسها على العالم، مما دفع بالقائمين عليه بمشاركة عربية وعالمية إلى التفكير مليا في وضع آليات عملية من خلال أوراق علمية قدمت إلى لجان المؤتمر، فقبل منها 31 بحثا وزعت على محاور عدة، وأيضا ستلقى في 4 أيام إضافة إلى 10 متحدثين مختصين في مجال تعليم اللغة الإنجليزية وتعلمها. طبعا بعرف لأني تخصص عربي ماخذ لساني على اللغة العربية، هو مجال تعلم اللغة الإنجليزية، طبعا بمشاركة جامعات أو هم من جامعات عالمية ودولية. لا أريد أن أطيل، أرحب بالجميع، ولا بد ومن لا يشكر الله لا يشكر الناس لا يشكر الله. أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل باسم أعضاء اللجنة التحضيرية إلى القائمين على هذا المؤتمر، وأخص بالذكر رئيس المركز الديمقراطي الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر، وأعضاء اللجنتين العلمية والتحضيرية والإعلامية، وكل من ساهم في إنجاح هذا المؤتمر. لهم جميعا مني ومن اللجنة التحضيرية كل الشكر والتقدير. بداية نبدأ بكلمة الأستاذ الدكتور كريم عايش، يتحدث نيابة عن رئيس المركز الديمقراطي. فليتفضل الدكتور كريم عايش بإلقاء كلمة المركز الديمقراطي المركز الديمقراطي من الرباط، فليتفضل مشكورا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا سيدي الرئيس. يسعدني في هذا اليوم وأنا أنوب عن الدكتور رئيس المركز الديمقراطي العربي الأستاذ عمار شرعان أن أشكر كل السادة الحضور، وعلى رأسهم معالي وزيرة الثقافة بحكومة الوحدة الليبية، والسادة رؤساء الجامعات وعمداء الكليات الشريكة، الأكاديمية الليبية عبر معهدها لتنمية الموارد البشرية، جامعة بنغازي، جامعة طرابلس، جامعة القدس المفتوحة، جامعة الموصل، جامعة مصطفى اسطنبولي، وجامعة منوبة. وإن نغتنمها فرصة أيضا لشكر اللجنة التحضيرية على هذا الجهد القيم والكبير، وبقية أعضاء اللجنة العلمية بما بذلوه من ساعات عمل وساعات جهد لتحكيم وتدقيق وقراءة كل المساهمات والبحوث قبل إحالتها إلى الجلسة العامة. يسعدنا أن نكون شركاء مع مختلف هذه المؤسسات العريقة، ويكون هذا المؤتمر في إطار سلسلة مؤتمرات المركز الديمقراطي العربي التي دأب على تنظيمها على مدار الأسابيع الماضية والأسابيع إن شاء الله القادمة ضمن برنامج مليء وحافل بالأنشطة. ونعتبر أن موضوع التعليم عن بعد يكتسي غاية من الأهمية بما شكلته جائحة كورونا من قلب لموازين الحياة الاجتماعية والاقتصادية والعلاقات الدولية على مستوى العالم، وما فرضته من ضرورة التأقلم مع هذا المتغير الجديد الذي أقعد التلاميذ والطلبة بالمنازل وترك هذا المجهود العلمي والأكاديمي على الرف في انتظار وجود حلول. لكن وجود الوسائل التكنولوجية الحديثة والكفاءات البشرية المكونة في إدارة هذه الوسائل، بالإضافة إلى المجهود الدولي الذي انخرط فيه كل الأكاديميين، شكل لبنة أساسية في مواصلة النشاط العلمي والأكاديمي والمساهمة في تطوير البحث العلمي على مستوى الجامعات والمدارس والمؤسسات والمعاهد. المركز الديمقراطي العربي عبر شركائه استمروا على هذا النهج وساهموا بوضع حجرهم على بناء التحول التكنولوجي المرافق للتعليم عن بعد، وكان للمؤتمرات والندوات العلمية الافتراضية الأثر الطيب في العمل على دفع الباحثين والأكاديميين والأساتذة في مختلف المجالات للاستمرار في العمل والعطاء وتطوير الأنشطة والمستويات العلمية التي كانوا يشتغلون بها. برنامج المؤتمر هو برنامج غني يمتد على 4 أيام، صيغ بطريقة علمية مخففة ودقيقة، ويسهل على كل الحاضرين سواء مشاركين كانوا أو مجرد زائرين أن يتمكنوا من الحضور بسهولة ويستفيدون في إطار مداخلات تزوج ما بين اللغات الحية العالمية من العربية إلى الإنجليزية إلى لغة فرنسية. وفي متم كلمة هاته لا يسعني إلا أن أذكر كما عهدنا دوما في المركز الديمقراطي العربي على ضرورة التقيد بالإجراءات الصحية الصارمة وارتداء الكمامة في الأماكن العامة والتزام التباعد الاجتماعي حفاظا على صحتنا جميعا، وحتى نستمر في العطاء ونلتقي مجددا في إطار أنشطة ومؤتمرات وندوات قادمة. واسمحوا لي باسمكم جميعا أن نترحم على شهداء فلسطين وشهداء الأقصى، ونحن نتابع ما يحدث في حي الشيخ جراح وتل الهوى وليفتا، قرية ليفتا المهجرة، وهذا يحس في أنفسنا، وندعو الله أن يسرع بحل القضية الفلسطينية وإقامة الدولة الفلسطينية والحياة الكريمة لكل الإخوة في الأراضي المحتلة والقدس. وإليكم الكلمة سيدي الرئيس.
أشكر كلمة المركز الديمقراطي العربي الدكتور كريم عايش على هذه الكلمة الطيبة المؤثرة، ونتمنى من الله سبحانه وتعالى، نحن تركنا الحديث يعني مجال لأخونا الدكتور سمير النجدي ابن مدينة القدس، وأثرنا على أن يكون حاضرا بيننا ليلقي كلمة رئيس الجامعة. والآن كلمة يعني للمؤتمر رئيس دأب وواصل الليل بالنهار لإنجاح هذا المؤتمر. الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر غني عن التعريف، مدير تنفيذي للمركز الديمقراطي العربي، مدير معهد تنمية الموارد البشرية في وزارة التعليم الليبية، رئيس قسم الدراسات الأوروبية والآسيوية بكلية اللغات في جامعة بنغازي، وعضو مجلس إدارة جامعة بنغازي. كل التحية والاحترام للأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر على هذه المناصب، وهو أهل لها، وأكبر دليل انعقاد هذا المؤتمر العلمي الدولي الافتراضي الواسع والمعمق في أبحاثه والمتعلقة باللغة الإنجليزية. نترك المجال الآن لرئيس المؤتمر الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر لإلقاء كلمته، فأهلا وسهلا. تفضل أستاذي الكريم.
بارك الله فيك أخي الأستاذ الدكتور عبد الكريم، وشكرا جزيلا على هذا المقدمة الجميلة. وما أنا إلا طالب علم، وما أنا إلا صغيرا أمام جهودك الحقيقة الحثيثة التي ساهمت بإذن الله في إنجاح هذا المؤتمر. بسم الله الرحمن، علم القرآن، خلق الإنسان، علمه البيان، والصلاة والسلام على النبي العدنان سيد الأولين والآخرين محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى السلام. الأخوة الحضور الكرام، سيادة معالي وزيرة الثقافة والتنمية المعرفية السادة الدكتورة مبروكة تاغي، بارك الله فيك على حضورك وتشجيعك، ونتمنى لك إن شاء الله تعالى كل التوفيق في مهامك الموكلة إليك، والتوفيق بإذن الله من الله وبجهود المخلصين من أمثالك. بارك الله فيك سيادة معالي وزيرة الثقافة والتنمية المعرفية. كذلك في هذا المقام الكريم لا يسعني أن أتقدم بجزيل الشكر والعرفان لكل من ساهم أو سيساهم في إنجاح هذا المؤتمر الذي سيكون بإذن الله فاتحة خير على أمتنا العربية. نحن في الواقع لا نتفق أحيانا سياسيا، ولكننا في الواقع نحاول أن نتحد إعلاميا ونتحد ثقافيا وأكاديميا، وما هذا المؤتمر إلا جزءا من ثقافتنا. نحن أمة واحدة، يجمعنا أب واحد ويجمعنا عرق واحد ويجمعنا مع اختلاف الديانات، ولكن نظل نحن أمة العرب، أول الأمم وأقوى الأمم التي كانت في عصر من العصور أمة الحضارة والثقافة. بينما كانت أوروبا تغرق في الظلام، كانت الأمة العربية هي الأمة التي أخذت مشاعل العلم والحضارة. ونحن بإذن الله تعالى سنسعى بشكل جاهد على أن نوحد مداركنا الثقافية ومداركنا المعرفية للنهوض بأمتنا العربية وتبوء المكان التي يجب أن تكون فيها. كذلك لا يسعني أن نتقدم بجزيل الشكر والعرفان لكل من ساهم في هذا المؤتمر، وهم أولا المركز الديمقراطي العربي الذي أتاح لنا في واقع الأمر هذه الفرصة للم هذا الشمل الكريم الذي نتعارف من خلاله ونتآخى ونتبادل الخبرات والمؤتمرات والاستشارات كأمة واحدة متآخية كلما يتعاضد أحدها مع الآخر. كذلك جزيل الشكر لإخواننا في جامعة القدس المفتوحة، حقيقة كانت لهم مشاركات فاعلة وقوية جدا. وفي واقع الأمر أنا بصفتي رئيسا للمؤتمر فكرت في لحظات أن ألغي هذا المؤتمر، أن أقوم على أقل تقدير تأجيل هذا المؤتمر تضامنا مع إخواننا في غزة. فقلت في نفسي هل يمكن أن نقوم بمؤتمر ونحن أخواننا في غزة يقتلوا من الاستعمار الصهيوني الغاشم؟ ولكن تواصل معي إخواننا بارك الله فيهم من جامعة القدس المفتوحة وقالوا لنا نحن نحارب ليس الحرب بالسلاح ولكن نحارب بالعلم. نحن في يدنا غصن الزيتون والعلم، وبالعلم إن شاء الله تعالى سنقهر الصهاينة الغاشمين، وبإذن الله تعالى سيكون النصر نصيرهم إن شاء الله تعالى. ونحن أحيانا بارك الله فيك يا أستاذ كريم على هذه نعم كلنا نكون كلنا قدس، وكلنا شعارنا وشعار المؤتمر هو القدس الشريف، وهذا هو مصر الأنبياء، وهذا هو مصر النبي عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى السلام. وكم أحيانا أشعر بالخجل الشديد عندما أرى طفل حجارة يقاتل الصهيوني المحتل، ونحن في واقع الأمر كما قال أخوتي الدكتور ماجد حسين، نحن نحارب بالعلم، وبإذن الله سنرتقي بهذه الأمة نصل بها إلى معالي الشرف والعزة، وبارك الله فيهم، وإن شاء الله ربي يوفقهم وينصرهم. كذلك جامعة أخوتنا من جامعة الموصل بلد أبو جعفر المنصور وخالد بن يزيد والدولة الأموية والدولة العباسية، بغض النظر عن الانتماءات السلفية والدينية والشيعية، ولكن بلد المنصور وبلد خالد بن يزيد وبلد هارون الرشيد، هذه الأمة التي كانت مشعلا للحضارة في فترة من الفترات، وقامت بعملية ترجمة في القرن التاسع للميلاد عندما كانت أوروبا تغص في غياه بالظلامات. تحية لإخواننا من جامعة الموصل. وكذلك لا ننسى طبعا جامعة بنغازي، جامعة الأمة التي منها تخرجت ومنه درست ومنه أرجع وأدرس وأعمل، وأتمنى لها كل التوفيق والازدهار، وكل التوفيق لرئيس الجامعة السيد الدكتور عز الدين الدريسي لمواكبته وتشجيعه الدائم حقيقة للنهوض بعملية تعليمية في ليبيا بشكل عام وفي بنغازي بشكل خاص. تحية كذلك إلى جامعة طرابلس عروس النهر وعروس البحر لما قدموه من إنجازات في مجال التقنية وفي مجالات العلم، الذي نتمنى من الله تعالى أن يوصلنا إلى ما نبتغيه ونبغاه. تحية إلى جامعة مصطفى اسطنبولي باسم مساكرة بالجزائر، الجزائر بلد المليون شهيد. تحية كذلك إلى جامعة منوبة بتونس، تونس الخضراء، تونس الشقيقة. الحقيقة لدينا جامعة الإمارات، لدينا عدد لا يحصى من الجامعات أعتقد، سواء كانوا في اللجان العلمية أو اللجان التحضيرية. كذلك لا يمكن أن ننسى الأكاديمية الليبية في ليبيا التي أنا أتشرف بترأس المعهد التنمية الموارد البشرية بهذه الأكاديمية العريقة التي تقدم إن شاء الله ذخرا علميا لهذا الوطن المعطاء. ونتمنى من الله تعالى أن يوفق ليبيا بشكل عام. الحقيقة فكرة هذه المؤتمر كما يبدو من الاسم، وهو Teaching and Learning English Translation Literature Post Pandemic Coronavirus. كما نعلم نحن نمر الآن بظروف عصيبة جدا، ونحن لسه استثناء من العالم الخارجي. ففيروس كورونا حقيقة أغلق العديد من المدارس وأغلق الجامعات وحاول أن يغلق حتى المناحي الاقتصادية، ولذلك نحن لا يمكن أن نكون استثناء من هذا الفيروس، وهذا الفيروس القاتل الذي يسبب هذه المآسي. ونحن في هذا لمحاربة هذا الفيروس لابد أن نحاربه بأشياء علمية، ومنها استخدام التقنية في العلم، استخدام التقنية في التدريس، واستخدام التقنية في التعلم والتعليم. وهذا هو الهدف الأساسي من هذا المؤتمر العالمي العلمي الذي يقام للمرة الأولى بضم هذه العدد النخبة الكبيرة من الجامعات والخبراء في هذا المجال. حقيقة نحن فكرتنا أن نحاول أن نطور، أن نجد وسائل تعليمية ووسائل علمية تدريسية لتطوير مناحي التعليم التقليدي والاتجاه إلى التعليم التقني. نحن لا يمكن أن نذكر أننا في القرن 21 عصر التقنية وعصر التكنولوجيا وعصر العلم وعصر اللغة الإنجليزية. اللغة الإنجليزية نحن نعتز ونفتخر بلغتنا العربية كلغة أم، ونحن أبناء اللغة العربية، ولكن لا يمكن أن ننكر دور اللغة الإنجليزية كلغة عالمية الآن لغة العلم، ولا بد أن نتعلم اللغة الإنجليزية كما تعلموا هم لغتنا العربية. وعندما كانت في القرون السادسة عشر والسابعة عشر اللغة العربية هي اللينغوا فرانكا، اللغة الوسيطة، الآن اللغة الإنجليزية. ولذلك حتما علينا أن نركز على هذه اللغة لمواكبة تطورات العصر ولمواكبة العلم. كذلك يسعدني في هذا المكان هذا المجال أن أرحب بالسادة السيد طبعا الدكتور عز الدين الدريسي رئيس جامعة بنغازي الذي إن شاء الله سيحضر إن لم يكن لديه ظروف. كذلك السيد الأستاذ بروفيسور يونس عمر رئيس جامعة القدس المفتوحة، وبارك الله فيه على هذه الدعوة الكريمة. وكذلك السيد الدكتور سمير نجد من جامعة القدس، والسيد حازم ذنون عميد كلية التربية بجامعة الموصل، وكذلك السيد كرماس مختار عميد كلية الآداب واللغات جامعة مصطفى اسطنبولي، والسيد عامر الزريق الأستاذ بروفيسور عامر الزريق مع حفظ الألقاب من جامعة الزاوية، والسيد الدكتور حبيبي الدكتور عمار شرعان رئيس المركز الديمقراطي العربي. كذلك أستاذي أخي الكريم الدكتور كريم عايش والدكتور صهيب وبارك الله فيهم. ولا يمكن الحقيقة أن أنكر دور اللجان العلمية وبخاصة جامعة القدس المفتوحة. الحقيقة الأسماء كثيرة وأخاف أن أنسى أحد من الأسماء. كذلك أخي الأستاذ الدكتور محسن الحاملي من جامعة منوبة الحبيبة، جامعة طرابلس السيدة الدكتورة نادية نصير وأحمد ماهر وغيرهم. اللجان التحضيرية الحقيقة برئاسة الدكتور عبد الكريم خريوش الحقيقة الذي بذل مجهود، وإحنا أخذنا لبطنا الليل بالنهار حقيقة. في خلال الأسبوع الأخير كانت لدينا اجتماعات تتواصل أحيانا 3-4 ساعات يحدث فيها النقاش ويحدث فيها الزعل، ولكننا نجد أنفسنا أسرة واحدة الحقيقة لأجل إظهار هذا المؤتمر العلمي العالمي بأبهى صورة له. نحن في مستوى يصل إلى ممكن مستوى الدول الأمريكية والدول الأوروبية في تحضير هذه المؤتمرات وهذه الندوات العلمية. وأنا شخصيا سبق لي عندما كنت في الولايات المتحدة أن رأست مؤتمرات في كوبا وفي كندا وفي بورتوريكو وفي هاواي. كنت رئيسا وأفخر أنني عندما أتكلم أفخر أي شيء أقول أنا يوسف زغواني عمر من جامعة بنغازي من ليبيا من شمال أفريقيا، والحمد لله رب العالمين يوفقنا في هذا المجال. كذلك لا يمكنني أن أنسى حقيقة الإخوة المقدمين الكينوت سبيكرز الذين حقيقة يشاركون ويشرفون في هذا المحفل العلمي العالمي. منهم دكتور جيسيكا. طبعا دكتور جيسيكا هذه إنسانة خبيرة في مجال التربية والتعليم في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وأنا نعرفها شخصيا، تبوت العديد من المناصب في وزارات التربية والتعليم. كذلك الدكتور ديفيد مارتن من جامعة واشنطن في سياتل وهو اسم كبير جدا غني عن التعريف. كذلك الدكتور كيم من جمهورية كوريا الجنوبية من سيول وهو اسم كبير جدا. دكتور ستيفن مسؤول على برامج الآيلس في ليبيا. الدكتور شيباني الحارث من العراق الحبيب ومنظر عند نظرية النبضية وهي نظرية حديثة وهو مؤسسها. الدكتور نادية نصير من جامعة طرابلس، والدكتور كونا من الهند. الحقيقة الأسماء كثيرة، والحمد لله بتضافر هذه الجهود سينجح المؤتمر نجاحا باهرا بتضافر هذه الجهود. وعندما تكون النوايا صافية بدون أي مقابل مادي بدون أي، نحن نحب أنفسنا في الله ولله، وإن شاء الله تعالى سيكون هذا المؤتمر ناجحا. وجدد الترحيب بسيادة المعالي الوزير مبروكة عثمان توغي، ونتمنى لها التوفيق والنجاح. وبارك الله فيك على تلبية هذه الدعوة الكريمة، ونشكرك سيادة المعالي الوزير وزير الثقافة والتنمية المعرفية. بارك الله فيكم ونتمنى لكم كل التوفيق، وبارك الله فيكم وكل من ساهم ولو بكلمة خير. كذلك لا يسعني لدينا الآن قناة ليبيا الفضائية، ولدينا مركز الإعلامي في جامعة بنغازي لتغطية هذا الحدث العلمي الهام، وكذلك جامعة القدس أعتقد إذاعتها التلفزيونية تنشر هذا الحدث العلمي الهام. بارك الله فيكم، وإن شاء الله ربي يوفقكم وينصرنا على الغاشم المحتل الصهيوني. وإن شاء الله المؤتمر القادم سيقام في القدس الشريف بإذن الله تعالى.
أشكرك أستاذي الكريم أستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر على هذه الكلمة الدافئة والدافئة. الحقيقة هي كلمة معبرة، أثلجت الصدور وأبنت ووضحت وأفصحت الحقيقة عن هذا المؤتمر، وشكرت نيابة عنا، فأنت أعلم بالناس منا وأعلم بالمقامات التي تحضر هذا المؤتمر، فلك جزيل الشكر والاحترام والتقدير. ومواصلة للشكر، يعني يثري هذا المؤتمر حضور شخصية ثقافية مميزة، وزيرة الثقافة الليبية الدكتورة مبروكة توغي. فحضور الوزيرة وهذا المقام الكبير لهذا المؤتمر هو إثراء للحقيقة إلى هذا المؤتمر، ودعم متواصل للعلم والتعليم، ودعم أيضا لمواكبة التطور والنهوض بالأمة من ردهات الثبوت إلى أن تجد لها مكانا مميزا بين الأمم. فلا نريد أن نبقى بين هذه الردهات، وعلينا أن ننطلق بمشيئة الله كعرب ومسلمين لنصل إلى الأمم المتقدمة، لنحافظ على كينونتنا وهويتنا الثقافية واللغوية والدينية والفكرية. نترك المجال لمعالي الوزيرة الدكتورة مبروكة توغي عثمان لإلقاء الكلمة، فلتتفضل مشكورة.
شكرا سيدي على الاستضافة. السيدات والسادة المشاركين بالمؤتمر، أحييكم وأشكر المركز العربي الديمقراطي بألمانيا على دعوته الكريمة لي كوزيرة الثقافة والتنمية المعرفية. كما يشرفني أشكركم بكلمة في جلسة الافتتاحية بمناسبة عقد ندوة حول تعليم وتعلم اللغة الإنجليزية والترجمة والأدب. كما أشكركم على الاهتمام بدعوة جامعتي بنغازي وطرابلس للمشاركة في هذه الندوة الهامة. أتمنى لأعمالكم ومجهوداتكم العلمية النجاح من خلال أوراق عمل رصينة والعلمية، ومن خلال المشاركات في الحوار الآتي الذي سيتقدم به أساتذة متخصصين من أجل التعرف والإحاطة بما جرى ويجري في هذا المجال على النحو الذي خططت له الندوة وما بعد جائحة كورونا. لا شك أن البحث العلمي مفيد وضروري جدا، خاصة عندما تكون المشاركات والمقاربات متنوعة في الاختصاص وجامعة لعدة بلدان. أتمنى الأخذ بعين الاعتبار موضوع الترجمة من وإلى اللغة الحية وعلاقة ذلك الإيجابية بتدريس اللغة الإنجليزية معرفيا وعلميا، ودور ذلك في التعارف الإنساني وانتقال المعرفة والعلوم والتغلب على الصعوبات والمشاكل والجوائح مثل كورونا. أكرر شكري وتقديري للجميع وتمنياتي لكم بالنجاح والتوفيق. شكرا.
أشكرك معالي الوزيرة على هذه الكلمة الطيبة. والآن من قلب مدينة القدس، من الشيخ جراح، من بطن الهوى، من سلوان، من المحاذية إلى محاذية للقدس للأقصى الشريف، حرصنا كل الحرص على أن يكون ممثلا لجامعة القدس المفتوحة، ممثلا لرئيس الجامعة الأستاذ الدكتور يونس عمرو، أحد أبناء هذه المدينة الطيبة وأحد قامات جامعة القدس المفتوحة، الأستاذ الدكتور سمير النجدي. وأنا مثله العين ما يجري الآن في الشيخ جراح أيقونة الصمود من الكرد وأخيها من اعتقال وضرب مباشر، فعيننا على ما يبث وعيننا أيضا على هذا المؤتمر، فأراه مشغولا، ولكن يعني الانتباه وما يحصل في القدس حاجة يومية تراكمية، فأولى بأن يتحدث عما يجري ويتحدث عن جامعة القدس المفتوحة أيقونة فلسطين القدس الشريف. أحد أبنائها إنه الأستاذ الدكتور سمير النجدي، ممثلا رئيس جامعة القدس المفتوحة، نائب الرئيس للشؤون الأكاديمية. أترك له المجال ولا أريد أن أحرق أوراقه أو كلمته كابن لمدينة القدس، فليتفضل مشكورا الأستاذ الدكتور سمير النجدي.
أشكرك دكتور عبد الرؤوف. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. معالي الدكتورة مبروكة عثمان توغي وزيرة الثقافة الليبية المحترمة، رئيس المؤتمر الدكتور يوسف زغناوي عمر، نائب رئيس المركز الديمقراطي العربي الدكتور كريم عايش، الأستاذ الدكتور عبد الرؤوف خريوش رئيس اللجنة التحضيرية للمؤتمر، رؤساء جامعات بنغازي الأستاذ الدكتور عز الدين الدرسي، ورئيس جامعة الموصل الأستاذ الدكتور قصي الأحمدي، ورئيس جامعة طرابلس الأستاذ الدكتور نبيل صبري المحترم، الضيوف الأكارم كل باسمه ولقبه، أحييكم بتحية الإسلام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. متحدثا نيابة عن رئيس جامعة القدس المفتوحة الأستاذ الدكتور يونس عمر، أرحب بكم أجمل ترحيب وأنقل لكم تحياته وتمنياته لمؤتمركم هذا بالسؤدد والتوفيق. يشرفني أن أكون متحدثا في مؤتمر هام في مجال الترجمة والأدب في اللغة الإنجليزية، والذي تكمن أهميته في مشاركة ثلة من الأكاديميين والخبراء من جميع أنحاء العالم من الوطن العربي ومن أمريكا وآسيا وكوريا كما ذكر، ومن جميع أنحاء العالم بشكل عام. وأيضا يساهم هذا المؤتمر في تبادل خبرات المختصين حول تعليم وتعلم اللغة الإنجليزية والأدب والترجمة في ظل الظروف الاستثنائية التي فرضها وباء كورونا على جميع مناحي الحياة ومنها الحياة الأكاديمية. بينما كنت أتفقد برنامج المؤتمر وقع نظري على صورة قبة الصخرة المشرفة المستخدمة كخلفية للبرنامج، وآثرت أن أتحدث إليكم قليلاً عن القدس وما يجري فيها من أحداث متجاوزاً البروتوكول الأكاديمي لهذا المؤتمر. فاعذروني، أنا ابن القدس أتحدث إليكم منها. القدس هي بوصلة العرب والمسلمين على مر التاريخ، ومؤشر يدل على عزتهم ومناعتهم من عدمها. القدس العاصمة الأبدية للشعب الفلسطيني المناضل الذي ضحى وما زال يضحي كي لا تطمس عروبة هذه المدينة المقدسة. إن ما يقوم به الاحتلال الصهيوني من إجرام بحق هذه المدينة وسكانها الفلسطينيين من أجل تهويدها وطرد سكانها وأهلها ليندى له جبين كل حر وشريف، وتحزن عليه الإنسانية جمعاء. المحاولات مستمرة للاستيلاء على بيوت المقدسيين وطردهم منها، تلك البيوت التي ورثوها أبا عن جد، أصبحوا في هذه الأيام لا يستطيعون الدفاع عنها ولا يدرون إن كانوا سيمضون ليلة أخرى فيها أم لا، ومتى سيأتي الأمر العسكري من دولة الاحتلال بإخراجهم وطردهم منها. كل هذا من أجل تفريغ القدس من سكانها العرب المقدسيين الذين هم شوكة في حلق الصهاينة وخط الدفاع الأول عن المسجد الأقصى المبارك، أولى القبلتين وثاني الحرمين الشريفين. لكن هيهات هيهات، الشباب الفلسطيني وفي مقدمتهم المقدسي أقسموا أغلظ الأيمان أن يضحوا بالغالي والنفيس في سبيل أقصاهم والحفاظ عليه. سأروي لكم قصة قصيرة، قصة عن فتاة مقدسية لتتصوروا معي مدى المعاناة التي يعيشها أبناء القدس هذه الأيام. هذه القصة هي قصة زينة الحلواني، الصحفية المقدسية ابنة 25 ربيعاً التي اعتقلها جيش الاحتلال قبل بضعة أيام في شير جراح، الحي المقدسي المهدد بالمصادرة، وبسبب تضامنها مع سكان الحي ورفع علم دولتها. اللافت في الأمر أنها كانت ترفع شارة النصر والابتسامة على وجهها حين تم اعتقالها، لكنها بكت بحرقة كبيرة بعد بضعة أيام عندما تم الإفراج عنها. لم تبكي زينة على نفسها ولا بسبب اعتقالها، بل بكت على أطفال صادفتهم في زنازين الاعتقال لا تتجاوز أعمارهم 10. قالت: لم أشعر بالعجز في حياتي مثلما شعرت عندما كان هؤلاء الأطفال يبكون ويسألون عن أمهاتهم. هم أطفال وهي لا تستطيع أن تفعل شيئا لمساعدتهم. بكت زينة من أجل الطفولة المسلوبة، بكت من أجل أطفال القدس، من أجل أن يكون لهم فجر في هذا الزمن المجنون المشوه. تكلمت زينة بدموعها بكل لغات العالم، ولامست كلماتها قلب كل حر وشريف في هذا العالم المنافق. دموعها لا حدود لها، أكبر من كل الأوطان. هذه المعاناة التي يتجرعها كل فلسطيني في كل يوم من صباح ومساء، لكنه كالصخرة ثابت، وتد في حلق الصهاينة الفجار. اعذروني، فأنا ابن مدينة تداعى عليها أسفل خلق الله، وتركت تتخبط بدمها دون معين أو نصير. أنا ابن القدس. أحيي أهلنا في غزة، في غزة العزة وغزة الصمود، الذين أشعرونا بالفخر والعزة لأول مرة منذ أمد بعيد. ونترحم على شهدائنا ونسأل الله أن يشافي جرحانا ويفك أسر معتقلينا. أثمن دور القائمين على هذا المؤتمر والذين بذلوا جهودا عظيمة لإخراجه إلى حيز الوجود ليرى النور. كل الشكر والامتنان لكل من أسهم بجهد قل أو كثر، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أشكرك أستاذ الكريم، يعني وإن شاء الله بمجهود ودعم أخواننا العرب، وهم يعني ما شاء الله وإن ضعفوا ولكن إلى حين، وإن كان الوهن فهو إلى حين، وإن شاء الله ستبث الهمم والعزائم من جديد، وإن شاء الله النصر آت آت. وأشكرك على هذه الكلمة الدافئة الطيبة المعبرة عن معاناة أهلنا في مدينة القدس، والذي يحاكي يومهم ليلهم. ولا يسعنا إلا أن نتمنى من الله العزيز الكريم النصر القريب إن شاء الله. والآن مع كلمة رئيس جامعة بنغازي الأستاذ الدكتور عز الدين الدرسي، إذا كان موجودا أو من ينوب عنه فليتفضل مشكورا. نعم دكتور موجود أم؟
نعم أنا سأنوب عنه حقيقة. عندنا فترة الظهيرة وكنا متفقين أنه سيأتي، ولكن نتيجة ظرف طارئ كما تعرف الأمور التي تمر بها بلدنا الحبيب، ولذلك استدعي إلى ولذلك سألقي الكلمة نيابة عنه إذا سمحت لي.
نعم تفضل دكتور يوسف تفضل.
نحن كجامعة بني غازي تعتبر جامعة بني غازي أول جامعة ليبية أنشئت في عام 1955 ديسمبر 1955، وتعد أم الجامعات بطلبة ما يقارب 100,000 طالب، ولدينا 23 كلية على مستوى المنطقة الشرقية والجنوبية. كذلك لدينا ما يقارب 3000 عضو هيئة تدريس، وتقريبا 4000 أو 5000 موظف يقومون بإدارة هذه الجامعة. جامعة بنغازي حقيقة لديها العديد من المناشط العلمية والأكاديمية في مجالات سواء على المستوى المحلي أو على المستوى الدولي. وأخيرا الأسبوع الماضي كان هنالك مؤتمرا للأسرة
ربما الصوت دكتور يوسف قطع البث. ننتظر قليلا إلى أن يلتحق الأستاذ دكتور يوسف لإكمال كلمته. دكتور يوسف
نواصل الكلمة في مجالات البحث. آسف لانقطاع النت.
لا
الآن حقيقة نعم الآن موجود في مكتب وزارة الثقافة باستضافة أخي العزيز الأستاذ طارق الشحاوي مستشار سيادة وزير الثقافة. حقيقة نحن كجامعة بني غازي نمد أيدينا إلى الجامعات القدس وجامعات الموصل وجامعات طرابلس لتلاقي الأفكار ولتبادل الاستشارات والمؤتمرات، وسنسعى بإذن الله تعالى صادقين إلى إقامة مؤتمرات تكون بالحضور الشخصي باستضافة طبعا المركز الديمقراطي العربي وباستضافتنا نحن كجامعة بني غازي. وسأتكلم فقط قليلا بالإنجليزية لأن لدينا بعض الضيوف لو سمحتوا لي. I'd like to invite all our guests here to come to Benghazi inshallah in the future, namely Jessica I'd like you to come some days here and you see the old remains and other things, and you are welcome, and we'll offer everything for you. As you know that we are looking forward to meeting with you, and we are very appreciative for your contribution in this conference. We'd like to thank you a lot. Actually, we don't find words to express my gratitude to all of you, Jessica and David Martin and Kim and other keynote speakers. Thank you very much. I hope that next day, inshallah, next time or next year, maybe you will come here in person. You come to Quds, Jerusalem, Quds, or Iraq, or whatever. You are welcome at any time. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
طيب انهيت استاذ دكتورنا الكريم؟
نعم. السلام، بارك الله فيك. ما توقف عند هذه النقطة.
بارك الله فيك، أشكرك على هذه الكلمة الطيبة. والآن مع كلمة رئيس جامعة الموصل الأستاذ الدكتور قصي كمال الدين الأحمدي، يلقيها بالإنابة عنه الأستاذ الدكتور حازم دنون إسماعيل السبعاوي، عميد كلية التربية للعلوم الإنسانية في جامعة الموصل. وجامعة الموصل كما تعلمون يعني هي إحدى أهم الجامعات العراقية العريقة. فليتفضل أستاذنا الكريم بإلقاء هذه الكلمة الطيبة في هذه الجلسة الافتتاحية.
شكرا سيدي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى، والصلاة والسلام على نبيه الذي اصطفى، وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى. السيد مدير المركز الديمقراطي العربي المحترم، السادة أصحاب السعادة رؤساء الجامعات المحترمون، السادة الباحثون مع حفظ الألقاب والمناصب، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يشرفني بداية أن أنقل لكم تحياتي وسلام رئيس جامعة الموصل الأستاذ الدكتور قصي كمال الدين الأحمدي. وكذلك يسعدني أن أستهل كلماتي بالإعراب بالشكر والتقدير إلى المركز الديمقراطي العربي، وعلى رأسه مدير المركز الأستاذ عمار الشرعان، والأخ الكريم الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر المدير التنفيذي للمركز الديمقراطي، بدعوتهم إيانا لنكون ضمن هذا التجمع الطيب. فأنا فرح أيما فرح بمشاركتكم وافتتاح هذا المؤتمر الافتراضي، فقد ضم عددا من العلماء وجمعنا بهم من شتى أنحاء العالم العربي والإسلامي ليلم شملنا ويقرب وحدتنا ويقوي تعارفنا. وما هذه المؤتمرات إلا أداة للتعارف. وأتوجه بالشكر الجزيل للجان المؤتمر، فقد بذلوا كل الجهد في إتمام هذا المؤتمر وظهوره بأبهى صورة. وفي الحقيقة تميز المركز الديمقراطي بتقديم المفيد والجديد بإدارة الأستاذ عمار الشرعان، واستطاع اجتذاب كوكبة من الباحثين المتميزين. وأتمنى المواصلة والاستمرار على هذا الدأب ليجمعنا في محافل علمية لنتلاقح الأفكار ونسمو بأفكارنا، وتتقدم لغتنا وشعبنا وبلادنا. وأتمنى السلامة لقدسنا الحبيب ولجميع الأخوة، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أشكرك أستاذ الكريم، من بعدك يا عراقنا ما لنا عراق. حياك الله أستاذي الكريم. جامعة الموصل الجامعة العراقية العريقة، والعراق دائما يعني كما أوصى بها عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه، بأن العراق تبقى عراق العرب، عراق الإسلام، عراق العروبة. ونتمنى إن شاء الله أن يفك أزمة كل إخواننا العرب في كل الأماكن وكل المآسي. إن شاء الله سيبزغ الفجر من جديد، ونأمل إن شاء الله أن نعم لأجيالنا القادمة الفرحة والبهجة والسرور وراحة البال والتقدم إن شاء الله. والآن مع كلمة نهاية الكلمات التقديمية ومسك الختام مع كلمة رئيس جامعة طرابلس الغرب الأستاذ الدكتور نبيل صبر النطاح، يلقيها بالإنابة عن الدكتور عادل جمعة ضياف مدير مكتب التعاون الدولي بالجامعة، فليتفضل مشكورا. دكتور دكتور عادل جمعة ضياف، جامعة طرابلس. انقطع البث مني او من استاذ دكتور يوسف؟
دكتور البث معك تمام، ننتظر كلمة الضيف او ضيف الشرف ان شاء الله. اكيد دكتور صهيب والدكتور يوسف معنا بتابعوا في الموضوع.
نعم، ننتظر كلمة الدكتور عادل جمعة ضياف. يعني ننوه إلى أن جامعة طرابلس هي من الجامعات المتعاونة والشريكة في هذا المؤتمر العلمي الهام، وننتظر كلمة الجامعة. ربما هناك خلل ما في الإعدادات، نتمنى أن يلتحق بنا هو أو من ينوب عنه. طبعا عقب هذه الجلسة الافتتاحية ستكون هنالك جلسة علمية للمتحدثين، ربما ل4 متحدثين. دكتور ماجد.
طبعا اسعد الله مساك واسعد الله مساكم جميعا. لحين انضمام الدكتور راح يكون we will have like for the next session we will have 4 keynote speakers and Dr. Lina Omar is gonna administrate this session inshallah. One speech is left by the president of University of Tripoli, and inshallah we'll overcome misconnection right now, and shortly we'll continue the second session of our first day conference today. Dr. Lina Omar from Jerusalem will be the chair of this session. Thanks for having your patience. I will just proceed in 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much. Dr. Suhaib, Dr. Yusuf, is it okay with مع كلمة جامعة طرابلس؟ دكتور كريم. ننتظر ولا في؟ دكتور كريم تفضل نسمعك.
الضيف ليس حاضر ولا من ينوب عليه.
طيب إذا يعني نحن في ختام هذه الجلسة الافتتاحية أشكر كل المتحدثين الذين تحدثوا وأسهبوا وأبانوا وأوضحوا وأفصحوا عن المؤتمر،
أستاذ عبد الرؤوف
تحدثوا في هذه الجلسة الافتتاحية.
عبد الرؤوف.
نعم تفضل يا دكتور يوسف، تفضل سامعين.
دكتور ماجد، نتمنى ان هم الكي نوت سبيكرز يبدو الساعه 6 باش يبدا البرنامج، هم 6 موعدهم ولا؟
نعم، هو احنا لا نتحدث عن الجلسه، نحن ننتظر كلمه جامعه طرابلس. ما بعرف اذا كان هو سيلتحق ام لا، ولكن
طرابلس وين قاعدين هم؟ جامعه طرابلس قاعد
مش سامع دكتور ماجد. دكتور ماجد شيل المايك.
عفوا دكتور يوسف، هل تعذر القاء كلمه جامعه طرابلس بحيث نستطيع ان نكمل؟
لا هم موجودين، يفترض انا قاعد. الدكتور احمد ماهر موجود. دكتور احمد ماهر كيف يصير دكتور احمد ماهر؟
ننتظر. تفضل.
قدمته للحديث.
نحن ننتظر يا دكتور يوسف، لو تكرمت اذا كان عندك التواصل مع الدكتور احمد ماهر في الكلمة
نعم،
الأخيرة الأولى. نحن الآن ننتظر بعد إذنك دكتور عبد الرؤوف.
نعم.
دكتور أحمد ماهر موجود معنا بالحضور، ولكن حاطط كتم من المايك. أعتقد إذا هو سامعنا ممكن يبدأ بحديثه.
وين جماعة الطلاب؟ وين المتكلم؟ تو انت مش معنا. قلت يا اخي ادخل فيه. الساعة كم الكلمة بتاعه؟ اكلم. كثير.
دكتور يوسف، بس تنويه ولا اخواني الكرام، احنا حقيقة مشينا اسرع في الكلمات، يعني
هذا السبب. نعم، هو طبعا جاهز.
نعم، وبالتالي هو لم ياتي وقته حسب البرنامج المؤتمر يا دكتور يوسف والحديث الجمعي، الكلمات كانت اسرع. ف شوفوا شو يعني ممكن يكون الاجراء المناسب من اجل ان تبقى الكلمات في موعدها. اذا كانت نعم تفضل.
هو تقريبا في وقته الساعة الآن 7 في توقيتنا، فيعني هو من المفترض يكون موجود معنا. لا أعلم.
دكتور يوسف، شو الموضوع؟
كلمته هو طبعا. هو لانه هو كان يعتقد ان نعتقد مشينا شويه. احنا نشوف التوقيت امتى. هو
مشينا اسرع. نعم،
هو توقيته ما اعتقدش توه. هو
كلام سليم.
هو اعتقد توقيته ما زال. تو نتاكدوا بس توقيته امتى. لانه تو كلمتهم قالوا لي جاهز هو، لكن بارك الله فيكم.
يعطيكم الصحة.
دكتور يوسف، يعني هاي راح ينضم لنا. he join us shortly.
لا، هو توقيته ما زال. هو توقيته تقريبا قريب 6:45 7:04. ما زال ساعة 4 تقريبا. نحن ما زال توقيته.
نحن بدأنا بتوقيتنا الساعة 6 بتوقيت القدس وفق البرنامج، يعني ساعة بشكل عام. لكن
احنا بس نبغى اسرع الكلمات شويه بس.
نعم.
دكتور عبد الرؤوف،
انا بحاول اتصل بيه دلوقتي دكتور عادل.
اكثر ناخذ دكتور احمد ماهر على الخط. تفضل.
حاليا بحاول اتصل بيه الدكتور عادل ضياف، وان شاء الله يكون معكم ان شاء الله في اسرع وقت. انا كلمت
نعم
عليه على الموعد.
نعم.
اعتقد ان 5 دقائق ممكن كلمه.
ما في مشكله دكتور، حقيقه الكلمات كانت اسرع مما كانت يعني مخطط لها.
نعم.
احنا عندنا 8 كلمات المفروض كانت تتم في 2.5 ساعة. 7 كلمات تمت في 45 دقيقه.
دكتور ماجد للاسف اتصلت بيه، لكن
دكتور احمد سامعينك. تفضل.
الدكتوره اتصلت دلوقتي بالدكتور عادل ضياف، للاسف الكهرباء قطعت عنده، فبيحاول ان هو يعمل كونكشن على السريع دلوقتي، فدقائق ويحاول يكون موجود.
بارك الله فيك. اوكي. اذا تكرمتوا، بس انا بدي احاول اغطي الفراغ ال5 دقائق لحين انضمام الدكتور من جامعه طرابلس. I would like to just make some clarification about the idea of this conference, if you allow me, just to speak for 5 minutes in order just to avoid keeping silence. So this is a very important international virtual conference, since it gathers partners from all over the world, either keynote speakers or researchers. We are proud that we have made a great effort that we gathered or collected 31 papers divided into 8 to 10 themes. And nowadays we are at the first day, we have speakers from all over the world. We have 4 speakers at the first day, and we have 1 speaker tomorrow, another 2 speakers tomorrow. The papers are divided into different themes, and 31 researchers from all over the world are gonna represent their papers for tomorrow, day after, and the day after. We wish all the best for the research and hope President of the University of Stambouli will join us shortly. Thank you so much. Dr. Yusuf, maybe you can add something. Dr. Yusuf, if you would like to add something about the nature of the conference, the idea of the conference.
Of course, yeah. If you
Yes,
don't mind, so, as you know that we are living in the 21st century, the era of globalization and the internet. So we know that the fatal virus that actually invaded almost all over the world. So actually it causes shutting down most of the universities and schools all over the world. As you know that in our developing countries, so developing countries in general, in our country here in Libya, that we based on the traditional teaching, which is based on face-to-face. So we don't have any style or strategy of teaching online or something like that. So what happens is that we stopped or ceased the teaching or schools for almost 10 months. So that actually causes a lot of trouble for us as teachers and students. So the Ministry of Education actually were forced to get into the era of technology, whereas we find ourselves that most of the teachers, students, learners are not aware of how to use technology. And the other thing is that because of some technical issues in our country based on the power and the technology internet, so actually we felt sometimes very helpless to conduct or use the technology in teaching and learning. So we thought, in fact, for conducting this conference to improve the situation of teaching and learning English, namely through the using technology, namely using the methods or styles used, such as Facebook, Google Classroom, and other strategies. So we thought, in fact, to conduct this conference to improve the situation of teaching and learning English in expanding circle countries, including Libya, Palestine, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, and other countries that in which we lack such kind of facilities, such kind of methods. We invited in this course, actually, we were very careful to invite those who are specialists in this area. So we personally, I talked with some keynote speakers that they are big shots in this field, such as Dr. Professor Jessica, Professor Devin Martin, Stephen Kim, and I'm sure that those will enhance and enrich our conference by their speech and their recommendations and other things. So we hope that we all work together as a team to make this event actually successful. That's all I have. In fact, I haven't prepared anything in advance. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yusuf. Dr. Ahmed Maher just contacted me. In fact, the speeches were very fast, and that's why University of Stambouli needs one more half an hour to speak. He is trying his level best to just join us in a few minutes. If that was a possibility, then it's okay. Otherwise, I suggest to go for the keynote speakers, and whenever he's available, he can deliver his speech.
دكتور ماجد.
دكتور يوسف، نعم اسمعك.
أنا أرى هنا لدينا الدكتورة ناجية سليمان، وهي طبعا حقيقة معنا في المركز، ولديها العديد من الأنشطة الثقافية ولديها العديد من الأنشطة الاجتماعية. وممكن تحكي لنا
على بركة الله، على بركة الله. تفضل
تفضلي دكتورة ناجية. الدكتورة ناجية. يبدو ان هي ماهيش موجوده الدكتوره ناشئه يبدو.
مرحبا دكتور يوسف.
اهلا دكتوره ناجيه، تفضلي دكتوره ناجيه، احكي لنا.
دكتور عبد الرؤوف بعد اذنك
ماسكه اظني مركز، ولو سمحتي.
دكتور عبد الرؤوف بعد اذنك، اجتهدنا انا والدكتور يوسف لحين انضمام رئيس جامعه طرابلس او ما ينوب عنه في الكلمه. رح نستضيف الدكتوره ناجيه سليمان تحكي عن بعض النشاطات الموجوده اللي عندهم. فكونك مدير الجلسه يعني excuse us just to have her just for 5-10 minutes لحين ما انضمام الدكتور
لا نعم تتفضل. لا بأس.
تفضلي سيدتي.
اهلا استاذي الكريم والجميع الحضور، اهلا وسهلا بكم. طبعا مستمره مناشطه المركز الديمقراطي والحمد لله بفضل جهود الشركاء من الجامعات المختلفه بالوطن العربي والمراكز المختلفه. صارت اجنده المركز الديمقراطي حبلى بالمؤتمرات الافتراضيه والحمد لله. كانت هي حل خلال ازمه الكورونا. استطاع الكثير من الباحثين العرب التواصل، طرحت عديد المواضيع بمختلف أنواعها. نتمنى من جهات الاختصاص في كل الدول أن تعود إلى مفكرة الديمقراطي وتطلع على هذه المؤتمرات ما حملته كلها من توصيات ومن نتائج للعمل بها والاستفادة، ليست تكون مجرد هي أو أوراق بحثية وتدون في كتب ويتم الاحتفاظ بها، إنما يستفيدوا منها حتى نثمن جهودهم بشيء ملموس، ليس فقط مجرد كتابات تبقى مع السنين في الأجندات المختلفة. نسعى بإذن الله أن يعمل المركز الديمقراطي في حال الانتهاء من جائحة كورونا أن تكون هناك مؤتمرات حضورية، وإن شاء الله ينظم لها المركز الديمقراطي مع الشركاء الفعليين اللي هم قاموا بمجهوداتهم المختلفة إبان هذه الجائحة ولم يركض نشاط الديمقراطي. صدرت عديد الكتب بمختلف الأنواع، كتب جماعية وكتب فردية. صدرت تقريبا جميع كتب المؤتمرات التي أنجزت. مجهود كبير يقوم به فريق الديمقراطي، سواء من الأساتذة التي تظهر على الساحة دائما، دكتور صهيب، دكتور كريم، دكتور محمد، من السادة جنود المخفيين اللي هم يعملوا في الخفاء، أستاذ عمار شرعان بارك الله فيه على هذه الفرصة التي فتحها لجميع الباحثين من مختلف الأقطار. ونتمنى أن يزداد النشاط يوما بعد يوم بجهود الأخوة الأكارم من كل الدول العربية. بارك الله فيكم، وتفضل دكتور يوسف لك الكلمة.
شكرا
دكتور محسن من جامعة منوبة. بروفيسور محسن حاملي من جامعة منوبة، اسم كبير جدا وغني عن التعريف. كتب الكثير من الكتب في مجالات الأدب، وأنا تشرفت بأن اشتغلت معه في مؤتمر علميا في شو اسمه جزيرة جربة في تونس، وكان مؤتمرا. يا ريت يا دكتور محسن تعطينا فكرة على جامعة منوبة وأفكارك في تطوير اللغة الإنجليزية ومكافحة فيروس كورونا بإذن الله تعالى. تفضل دكتور محسن، ولع المايك.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. هي جامعة منوبة جامعة انفصلت على جامعة تونس. سابقا كانت جامعة تونس وجامعة واحدة في العاصمة، ثم انفصلت سنة 85 وأصبحت مستقلة بذاتها، مثلها مثل جامعة المنار وجامعة كرتاج وجامعة الزيتونة. يعني من أصل جامعة تونس واحدة تكونت سنة 60. في منتصف الثمانينات انفصلت تكونوا منها 5 أو 6 جامعات في العاصمة فقط، وهي جامعة يعني محترمة الآن، في تقريبا 30,000 طالب وآلاف المدرسين والموظفين إلى آخره. و يعني فيها جميع الاختصاصات ما عدا، بالنسبة لجامعة منوبة، جميع الاختصاصات ما عدا الطب والصيدلة والأمور العلمية. يعني تقريبا هي جامعة تكاد تكون. نعم. هذا هو يعني هي بالنسبة هي نشطة جامعة منوبة تقريبا أفضل من غيرها بالنسبة للعاصمة حسب ما أعرف، في البحوث المشتركة مع الجامعات يعني خارج تونس بصفة خاصة، الجامعات الأوروبية، ومرتبطة بجامعات الفرنسية بصفة خاصة. هذا هو.
دكتور سامعينك أكمل.
طيب شكرا يا دكتور. يمكن عن هذه الكلمة دكتورنا الكريم.
نعم.
نشكرك على هذه الكلمة الطيبة، والحقيقة هي تعريف لا بأس به عن جامعة منوبة، وننتظر كلمة
الدكتور. أقترح أنه الدكتور ماجد يعطي مقدمة أو نبذة عن جامعة القدس
نعم.
المفتوحة، بحيث أنه الحضور
أو عن اللجنة العلمية، يعني جهودها والأوراق
عن الجامعة لو تحدث عن الجامعة أنت حضرتك أو حضرة الدكتور ماجد يعطي نبذة عن جامعة القدس المفتوحة.
دكتور جابر معنا. دكتور جابر معنا. الدكتور جابر أبو شويش.
دكتور ماجد أنا معك وبسمعك جيدا.
جابر، بعد إنك الدكتور بسيم والدكتور يوسف والدكتور عبد الرؤوف رئيس الجلسة، إحنا في معانا متسع من الوقت، إذا تكرمت كأحد أعضاء الرئيسيين في اللجنة العلمية تعطينا فكرة عامة عن طبيعة الأوراق وكيف تم توزيعها على المحاور وعدد الأوراق وطبيعة تداولها في الجلسات على مدار الأيام الثلاث القادمة لو تكرمت.
باختصار يعني هيك لأن يلتحق المتحدث.
أعطينا نبذة في 5 إلى 10 دقائق ماكسيمم. تفضل.
تمام. بسم الله الرحمن الكلمة إلي مضبوط؟
نعم تفضل.
دكتور
جابر. نعم تفضل.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم زدنا علما وعلمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا، واجعل علمنا حجة لنا لا حجة علينا، اللهم آمين. بادئ ذي بدء، أرحب بهذه الهامات وهذه القامات كل باسمه ولقبه، وحقيقة يطيب لي في هذا المساء الطيب من مساءات غزة هاشم فلسطين أن أرحب بالحضور، الضيوف والمشاركين والمنظمين كل باسمه ولقبه، وأخص بالذكر أخونا الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمر، وكذلك أخونا الدكتور عبد الرؤوف خريوش والدكتور محسن، ويعني جميع الأخوة الحضور كل بلا استثناء. حقيقة كانت تجربة طيبة أن نعمل في ضمن فريق مع بعضنا البعض من مجموعة من الدول العربية، وهذا إن شاء الله الخطوة الأولى على طريق الوحدة الحقيقية. يعني بما يخص الأوراق العلمية طبعا والحمد لله كانت كثيرة وعلى مستوى كلها، يعني نتج عنها تقريبا 31 ورقة علمية، وهي قسمت إلى 8 محاور حسب طبعا محاور المؤتمر كما حددت سابقا، منها يعني في كل يوم بعد اليوم الأول، طبعا في اليوم الثاني تبدأ الجلسات، ففي كل يوم ما بين 9 إلى 11 ورقة علمية مقسمة على 3 جلسات. فقسمت هذه المحاور حسب وحدة الموضوع، يعني بشكل ثيماتيك حسب وحدة الموضوع. فمثلا أوراق كانت بتتعلق بالتكنولوجيا أو تكنولوجي بيزد ليرنينج، أوراق كانت بتتعلق بالسايكولوجيكال اند سايكولينغويستيك approaches، أوراق كانت تتعلق بالترانسليشن اند ابلايد linguistics، أوراق كانت لها علاقة أو مرتبطة بمحور الكالتشر and teaching culture، أوراق أخرى كانت ذات علاقة بالبيور linguistics، أوراق أخرى كانت يعني بتنصب حول اللي هو language skills and language items. طبعا هذه هي المحاور بشكل عام. تم تقسيمها طبعا من خلال اللجنة العلمية إلى محاورها ال8، وإن كنت لا أذكرها جميعا حقيقة لأنه ليس أمامي الجدول، لكن رفلي ذكرت أنا بعضها. فكلها يعني أوراق وأبحاث وارتيكلز ترتقي إلى مستوى هذا المؤتمر. حقيقة شرفت بالاطلاع على بعض اللي هو مستخلصات هذه الأبحاث أو هذه الدراسات، وهي ذات موضوعات هامة وقيمة جدا. أتمنى من الله العزيز القدير أن تكون هذه أول تجربة ناجحة للعمل المشترك والعمل الدؤوب بين الجامعات العربية بالشراكة، وإن شاء الله ستكون نواة لوحدة عربية كبرى في مجتمعنا العربي وفي وطننا العربي الكبير. تحياتي لكم جميعا من غزة هاشم، ومرحبا وأهلا بكم، وشرفت بمعرفتكم جميعا. حياكم الله.
بارك الله فيك يا دكتور جابر.
دكتور جابر، لاحظنا أن ابنك الصغير يريد أن يشاركنا الجلسة الافتتاحية. سنكون جد سعداء بتلقي سلامه وتحيته وتحية الأبناء. فهذا المؤتمر وإن كان يعني للأكاديميين الكبار، فهو أيضا للمستقبل، لجيل المستقبل، للخلف. شرفنا بالأطفال دكتور جابر.
حياك الله دكتور كريم. يعني صدقا يعني بتعرف يعني أطفالنا شوية هيك شوية بسبب يعني ظروف الحرب وبسبب ظروف اللي مروا فيها، يعني صعب كبح جماحهم، فبالتالي يعني نترك لهم المجال. أنا يشرفني والله يعني هذه الدعوة الطيبة، ولكن طبعا لا أريد أنه أنا أثقل على إخواني وأخواتي اللي في الانتظار.
معليش دكتور، معليش هم أبنائنا نحن أيضا.
والله وهو كذلك. أشكركم على هذه الدعوة الطيبة. إن شاء الله في فرصة أخرى يعني نرتب لهم يعني لقاء هيك طيب، يعني
صغير، لقاء ندوة صغير
إن شاء الله تعالى.
بارك الله فيك يا دكتور كريم، وبارك الله في الجميع. الدكتور عبد الرؤوف تفضل. شكرا دكتور جابر على كلمتك الرائعة وعلى مداخلتك. دكتور عبد الرؤوف تفضل.
نعم. هي الجلسة الافتتاحية لأن أشكر المتحدثين. كلمة المركز الديمقراطي الدكتور كريم عايش من الرباط المغرب، والمغرب طبعا والرباط عزيزة على قلبي. فأنا تلقيت علوم الأولى مرحلة البكالوريوس في جامعة محمد الخامس بالرباط من عام 82 إلى تقريبا 86 87، يعني قبل أكثر من
يعني أثناء وجود جيل الرواد الأوائل.
نعم الفاسفيري والمتوكل وبنيس والطرايسي والجراري وهذا كذا دواليك، وأنت تكبى براءة وتكتب. وطبعا أيضا تحدث الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمرو عن أو عمر عن كلمة رئيس المؤتمر بصفته رئيسا للمؤتمر، وثم تلاه كلمة أثرت الحضور بحضورها وقامتها معالي وزيرة الثقافة الليبية دكتورة مبروكة توغي عثمان، ثم مثل جامعة القدس المفتوحة ممثلا عن رئيس الجامعة الأستاذ الدكتور يونس عمر الأستاذ الدكتور سمير النجدي ابن مدينة القدس الذي نشأ وترعرع وتعلم فيها وما زال فيها إلى الآن. ومن ثم كلمة رئيس جامعة بنغازي الدكتور عز الدين الدرسي، وثم كلمة جامعة الموصل التي ألقاها الأستاذ الدكتور حازم دنون نيابة عن رئيس الجامعة الأستاذ الدكتور قصي كمال الدين الأحمد. وكنا يعني لسوء حظنا لم يلتحق بنا ممثل جامعة طرابلس
الدكتور عبد الرؤوف إن شاء الله في غضون الجلسة الثانية الكينوت سبيكرز في حال توفره. تفضل أكمل.
ومن ثم تحدث ممثل جامعة منوبة عن جامعة منوبة والنشأة ودورها وريادتها في هذا المجال. في نهاية هذه الجلسة أشكركم جميعا وأشكر اللجان التحضيرية والعلمية وكل من أسهم في إنجاز هذا المؤتمر الهام، وبأخص بالذكر الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف عمرو والدكتور سهيب شاهين، يعني هو ما يسمى خلف الأضواء وكان فارس هذا المؤتمر وعمل بجهد ونشاط من خلف الكواليس. نحن نشهد له ذلك في اللجنتين العلمية والتحضيرية، وكان له ثقل بارز وهام ومهم أسهم في إنجاز هذا المؤتمر. أرفع الجلسة الافتتاحية الآن وأعطي لزميلتي الدكتورة شاهين لترأس جلسة
لينا عمر، الدكتورة لينا عمر يا دكتور
عمر، لينا عمر نيابة عن الدكتور هشام قطيش الذي أصابه يعني لما مصاب وفاة ورحم الله ميت. إن شاء الله ستكون الجلسة الثانية الآن بعد رفع الجلسة الافتتاحية. شكرا لكم جميعا والسلام عليكم. عمر لترأس الجلسة الثانية وشكرا للجميع.
عليكم السلام. بارك الله فيكم. بارك الله فيكم. تفضل يا دكتورة لينا.
السلام عليكم. شكرا لك دكتور عبد الرؤوف والجميع. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, respectable colleagues from different parts of the world, joining us today in this conference to share knowledge and exchange expertise in post-pandemic coronavirus time. I am Lina Omar from Al-Quds Open University, Jerusalem branch. It is my pleasure to be here with you all in this session in which we will listen to 4 distinguished keynote speakers discussing with us different topics in teaching English, tackling various issues, and highlighting on some areas of their expertise. Allow me first to remind you that by the end of the 4th presentation, we will open the floor for discussion for about half an hour. If you have any question or any comment, please write them down so that the keynote speakers would respond to your questions. Without any further ado, it is my honor now to invite our first distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Jessica Kirchhoffer, who is the Director of Partnership in Woodring College of Education at Western Washington University, Virginia, USA. She will tell us more about education in the United States, namely about post-pandemic effect, include greater focus on early childhood education and building anti-racist curriculum. We are looking forward to your presentation, Professor Jessica. The mic is with you.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this incredibly impressive event with so many influential presenters and professors. I would like to thank the Democratic Arabic Center all of the universities represented here today, and the scientific community. I would particularly like to thank Dr. Yusuf Omar. He and I met when we were both working on our doctorates at the University of Missouri, and I also became very good friends with his wife and children at that time. They hold a special place in my heart. I thank you so much for this experience. So, Dr. Omar, you did such a wonderful job of pronouncing my name. It is Dr. Jessica Kirchhofer, and I actually don't work in Virginia. I work in Washington State, and I use this background to show you that I live in a place that is extremely green and rainy, and it is surrounded by mountains and lots of water, ocean water. So, I wanted to share that I'm a specialist in early childhood education and not specifically linguistics. So my comments will be much more general. So my goal is to share with you some ways that I think the pandemic and this time period in particular in the history of the United States and the world has affected the entire focus of our educational system. I'll also share with you that it's difficult to separate out whether changes came only from the pandemic or whether many of them were also intertwined with the problems brought by the chaos of the Trump administration. That administration, representing only 35% of our American voters, attempted to dismantle systems designed to protect our people and environment. We saw devastating changes in the areas of immigration, including the ban on Muslims, changes in gender and racial equality, and including a movement toward white nationalism, changes in criminal justice and policing, changes in the environmental protection and climate change, the beginnings of a new distrust towards science and scientific investigation. We saw changes in the ethics of running an entire government and problems in international diplomacy. We saw changes in tax laws that favored the rich. We saw struggling families out of work due to all these businesses closing, and women primarily not able to work because of the need to care for their young children because the schools and childcare centers were closed. Honestly, we are still struggling to recover from the devastating effects of that administration. So, when we combine the poor response of that administration to the pandemic with these political climate we've been in, it's been a very complex and troubling time for the citizens of our country. It was hard on us for so many reasons. So many people dying, schools shut down, small businesses and restaurants closing, and many to never reopen, hospital overcrowding, and doctors, nurses, and all hospital staff just overwhelmed. Hugely high levels of fear, which also influenced mental health and led to including the mental health issues we saw with children who were unable to come to school and attempting to do school online. We saw higher rates even in teen suicide. Been very difficult. And, you know, the biggest was we all were separated from our loved ones to try to protect one another. As we emerge from the pandemic with the effective leadership of President Biden, there are two specific things that I'd like to focus on that have changed within our school systems and national agenda. One is a greater focus on early childhood education, and the other is a greater understanding for the need of anti-racist curriculums at all levels of the educational system, from preschools to higher education. I will first address the changes in early childhood education, which is my field. Considering that 71% of our women who have children in the workforce, 71% of our women who have children are working mothers. This country has been behind most other developing nations in terms of family leave for parents and support for childcare. Kindergarten starts at the age of 5, and at that point, there is no cost to send your child to school. However, this 71% of women who work need support for childcare, and our country does very little to subsidize or support that, and costs are extremely high, and pay for childcare workers is extremely low. So we needed governmental support. Many people not able to afford the childcare, and oftentimes the childcare that was available was not of high quality. Many childcare centers closed initially during the pandemic, which caused many of our doctors, firefighters, ambulance drivers, grocery store workers, and other essential workers to have to stay home to take care of their own children. It was key to problems in our economy. That most childcare closed down, but the ones that did so with extensive costs due to having to pay people to clean so much every day and having to sometimes pay paid leave when someone may have been exposed to the virus and they had to shut the center to make sure that it wasn't passed along. So that crippled our economy. Oh, just a minute. So that crippled our economy and left many out of work, and it became it loomed large on our horizons. Joe Biden came to the office with the goal of supporting families and children. He created the American Families Plan with many provisions to help families with young children, and put $425 billion earmarked for support of early care and education. The United States has never seen this type of focus before, and our early education system has been pretty fragmented, and many times the people who work in it do not have as much education as they need. And so it's been an area that has been problematic for a long time, especially considering that most people who need this early care are young in their professions, just when they're starting out, and the costs of childcare were upwards of $1,200 to $1,600 per month. So this plan is just now getting started in the United States, and apparently starting in July, they are going to give subsidies to families every month deposited into their bank account if they have children, to help them pay for appropriate and quality childcare. They are also doing much to boost the wages. The second part of the big changes noted in education was the attention that was brought to racial disparities in our country. First, we had President Trump vilifying people coming from Mexico, our southern neighbor, and alienating us from the rest of the countries due to things like Muslim bans and a greater focus, just poor international relations. So it brought attention to that, but also we realized for the first time that the people who are considered essential workers, the people who put food on our shelves at the grocery store and check people out, and the truckers that bring our food, and the people who work at gas stations to gas your car, all of these jobs are more likely to be done by people of color and minority individuals who are Black and brown. And that is because many of them are lower paying. And it brought to our attention that we cannot function well without these people, and that without this level of work, and that we need to reimburse people at a higher level. So lots of work on improving the minimum wage as well. Also, the realization that people were risking their lives by working in a grocery store before we were wearing masks, and even after that. So it became very apparent that our country operates on the backs of lower socioeconomic people. This also left the rates of the coronavirus much higher in lower socioeconomic communities and throughout the people that worked in those jobs. This was combined with a new understanding of color and race in our country. And that was due to George Floyd's death. I don't know if everyone there knows that name, but he was a Black man who was killed in front of many video cameras by a white officer just putting his knee on his neck for 9 minutes in front of a large group of people. So I think for a long time, African Americans have had terrible treatment in the United States, as have Native American people, and honestly, international families sometimes. And so that event brought people into the streets to protest. Even though people were afraid of COVID and everyone was staying home in their house, after that incident, everyone went out into the streets and marched and protested, saying, this can't continue in our country, and this is wrong. All sorts of people stood up all over the United States. So that white nationalism and that focus on white supremacy of the Trump administration brought attention to the troubles of people in our country. Thank you for adding that graphic. I appreciate that. The result was that many educational institutions, and particularly pre-service teacher education programs, began to focus on curriculums to help people understand the current state of affairs in our country. It is called different things in different communities. And so I'm going to refer to them. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as anti-bias work. You could hear it referred to as anti-racist work. You could hear it called anti-Blackness. You could hear it referred to as programs to help people understand BIPOC, which means Black, Indigenous, People of Color. You can hear it called culturally responsive curriculums. All of these are essentially a study of history and the ways in which power and control are used in our society to create great unfairness. And actually, yes, you kind of have to understand that our country is built on the enslavement of Africans and genocide of Native American peoples. So this has been happening for hundreds of years in the United States, but we're seeing a bigger movement now than ever because people are beginning to understand how pervasive it is and how much people fear for their lives. So all those types of curriculums have some things in common. they have some focuses. One is they want there to be a strengths-based focus where we see all children and their families as having valuable contributions to make to our classrooms, our communities, and our country, as well as all around the world. They want to make sure that children of color and international families are represented in books, posters, visuals, and materials used in classrooms. They want to make sure that teachers understand the history of our country and that history of enslavement of African American people and genocide of Native Americans still continues with bias and oppression today. These are structural racism, oppression, and equity issues that are being discussed frequently. We need to help teachers to understand the role that cultural values, assumptions, and beliefs play in their own biases towards people of color. They are working to strengthen the self-awareness of teachers related to their own biases and often unconscious prejudices. They want teachers to understand that most children of color suffer from trauma related to their care and treatment in America. This requires understanding from teachers to help put trauma-informed healing practices into place. There's a greater focus on building trusting relationships with parents of our children across the nation and to welcome parents into the classroom as partners. I will say that there is still much work to be done in these areas, and that is why these curriculums are becoming more well-known now and more. I'll answer your question in just a second. So I said, as you can see, our country is attempting to right itself after being thrown off course by both the pandemic and the Trump administration. As we emerge, we're seeing more focuses on the difficulties faced by childcare providers, people who need care during this situation, families with young children, and the effects on all of the oppressed populations in the United States. A greater understanding and work towards creating greater equity. Shukran. There was a question. Did policy affect students' behaviors inside schools? Are you talking about the, I'll cry if I tell this story, but I think it might be very important to tell.
Professor Jessica?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We could postpone the questions for the keynote speakers at the end of the fourth presentation. That would be great.
That's great. And I can answer that question then, and I can tell you a little bit about the effect on those behaviors. And
excuse me, Dr. Lina, Dr. Yusuf, maybe since we have enough time, we just make it a little bit twist in our plans so we can allow each speaker just to maybe easily for him just to comment on the questions directly after his speech, if you don't mind. We were just afraid of being short of time, but since time is available and we have plenty of time, so I suggest let Dr. Jessica carry on, let her answer the our comments, if you don't mind.
Of course. Go ahead, Dr.
Okay, Dr. Yusuf, what do you think? It's okay? Okay.
Go with you, yes.
تفضلي. شكرا أمارة. Yes, and carry on, please. Thank you, Dr. Lina. شكرا لتفاهمك. على بركة. Yes, please.
So let me ask the person who wrote the question, Do you want me to discuss behaviors during COVID or behaviors of children during the Trump administration?
I'd like to hear about both, if possible, please. Thank you.
I'll start first with
Trump's and after Trump's administration. Thank you.
So I'll start out with some things that happened before the pandemic started. And this story might make me cry, but that's okay. My own daughter went to school the day after Trump was elected. And one of her best friends wears a hijab. And her friend came to school and she saw her crying on a bench, and she went to sit beside her and ask her what was wrong. And she said that her mom that morning told her she could go to school without her hijab. And the daughter said, "Mama, I don't go anywhere in public without my hijab. Why are you telling me this?" And her mother just said, "It's okay. Allah will understand. It is okay if you go without your hijab." And the daughter said, "Mom, I would never do that." And so she was still wearing her hijab, but she was crying because she knew the implications. That was a mama trying desperately to protect her own child. And I'm sorry, that was very hard. And
we're so sorry for your tears, Dr. Jessica.
I am so sorry that our administration would do something like that.
Dr. Jessica, we appreciate your tears. I know you in person. You are very kind, very sweet.
I guess Dr. Yusuf was lucky to get to know you closely.
He's a close friend of mine, of my family, actually.
Yes, such a wonderful professor.
I'm so lucky to have Jessica, a friend of mine.
Such a wonderful human being and professor.
Thank you. Well, it is not professional to cry during presentations, so I do apologize for that.
Yeah, Lena, if you don't mind, yes. This is Jessica is the real face of the Americans. Actually, I spent almost 10 years in the United States. I've got friends till now. I've got contacts with them. They are very kind, very sweet, very helpful. In fact, I felt that if I were in my home, Benghazi, North America. Now I feel maybe a little bit home. In America, I cannot express what I do have actually there. I appreciate all your help, Jessica, for my family. I appreciate your sympathy. I appreciate everything. I appreciate your tears now when you talk about this incident.
I wish
we are
I
lucky
could
to have you with us.
I wish I could give more than my tears to fix that situation.
I know.
Because it was devastating to many of us. We saw our friends and our neighbors and people afraid for their lives, or afraid that someone would bother them in public. And that type of environment has been true of sometimes Native Americans and Black people in the United States as well. And so our country has a big reputation for, initially our country was settled as a melting pot where they wanted all cultures to come together. And a lot of people still speak of it that way. But there is a white nationalist trend in the United States that is going back on our history and what we were supposed to be established for. But I just want to assure you that there's at least 65% of us who are absolutely against that. I think maybe at least 70% and probably more. This is a small group of people, and logically, they should not have the power they have to make those types of things happen. And so we are trying our best to work through channels to get these things changed. But there are many people that agree. When you talked about children at school, I think that Trump being outwardly racist affected and made more people more brazen that it was okay to be mean to people from other countries and who looked different. His very first time in office, he talked about that all the people in Mexico are liars and rob people and rapists and terrible things that were not true. They're people seeking asylum from troubles in their own countries. So the other thing I would say is during the coronavirus, mental health among children and families it kind of went both ways. Most children, a lot of children in the United States get their stability from school. Some of them have parents who drink alcohol at home or do drugs or just every kind of person. I mean, we have millions of amazing, wonderful people, but we also have some children with parents who aren't as stable as they should be. And school became their place to be loved and hugged and fit in and have a classroom made just for them. And not having that safe space was very difficult for many, and rates of anxiety and depression in children and rates of child abuse increased. But we also had a portion of families who spent much more time with their children and loved all their time at home with them. So we had some of both, but also we found that doing school online, particularly for young children, is very hard on them. Teenagers need to be around their friends for support, things like that. So that was a little bit about those effects. Should I answer anything else, Dr. Omar, or is that enough for now?
Yeah. Just
okay. Just posted one question for you on the chat, please. Would you?
Why politicians impose upon
Dr. Majid.
Yeah. So I would say that politicians always lead educators, and this is a terrible trend. They impose things that don't make sense because they make laws. That don't make the best sense for care and education of children. They always say, we need data, and everything is going to be data-based. Well, sometimes the things children need can't be measured by a test, and that teachers knowing their children and knowing what they're ready for should be much more valuable. And we are constantly fighting against this and trying to move more people who know more about education into leadership roles in politics. Okay, did that answer it, or is there more to?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shukran. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. Pardon me for mispronouncing your last name, Kirkofer. Thank you for telling us more about the different needs, effects, and plan of Biden's leadership in coronavirus, namely at the educational, economic, and social levels. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite our second keynote speaker, Professor David Martin, who works in the English department at the Washington State University, Pullman, the United States. He's going to tell us more about the realities, experiences, challenges, and remedies of mind. The mic is with you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Omar, and thank you again, Yusuf and Dr. Alina, for just this opportunity, as well as the Democratic Arabic Center. I didn't want to butcher the name, so I wrote it down on my table here. Sorry, it's wonderful to have the opportunity to share this experience, but it's also a double-edged sword. This last year has been a very difficult year for all of us, to say the least. We have all had to become familiar with and comfortable with technologies that we are not used to using. And that's going to play out in a lot of what I say. I have been teaching for 21 years, so it's really difficult to take the teacher out of me. So I'm going to, forgive me, but I'm going to share my screen just so that you, to share the notes that I have. And I'm happy to share them with you as well. So let me go ahead and share that. And so, going to present my. So I've titled this Realities, Experiences, Challenges, and Remedies. Oh my. Because I think when we think of 2020 and 2021 now, that's kind of our reaction to it. Oh my, it's that kind of exasperation over all the different things that we've been through. And so I kind of wanted to cover the various elements of the conference theme to some degree or another, using my own experiences and my students' experiences as a basis for conversation. So also when I think of 2020, I think of the opening lines of Charles Dickens's Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. And there's this dichotomy that we see in this novel, that of course it's dealing with the French Revolution and, you know, both, whether it be the realities of the fiction part of it, but there are always things that happen that are negative, but also there are things that can be positive that can come out of it. And I think we need to look at that dichotomy now as we try to move past the pandemic and move into our new, whatever the new normal is. And so the realities of the pandemic, as of Thursday, over 117 million cases worldwide of the coronavirus, and over 3.5 million people have died worldwide from this disease, and growing. The economic impacts, so our realities, right? The economic impacts are astronomical. These are in areas of manufacturing, tourism, and other industries that we are all part of. We've lost jobs and we're not able to work, or we're working from home, or we're taking a chance and going to work, as was already stated. Healthcare industry is just it's characterized by a short supply and very, very high demand. But what we're here to talk about today is the impacts on education. And what I have to say in terms of the dichotomy here is that it's immeasurable. We can't measure really how education has been impacted, especially English education around the world. But it's very tangible in terms of its impact on our lives. And so that's really what I want to spend more time talking about. Let's see here. I've got to move. It's always hard to, when you're in Zoom, you got all these things crowding your screen. But Garcia and White's talk about the pandemic and its impact on education. And they talk about how almost overnight, everything was canceled. Our worlds were turned upside down. Everything in education has changed necessarily. And we've had to find ways to adapt to those changes so that somehow we can make sense of it and move forward. So as teachers, we've struggled. And I can't talk about everyone's experience, but I can talk about mine. As someone who is extremely familiar with technology over the course of 21 years, I have done my best to integrate technology into my courses every single semester. But we've got all these new technologies that are overwhelming us. We have publishers trying to push technologies on us. We have institutions saying we have to use this technology, however imperfect it might be, in order to present the information that is necessary for our students. We've just been inundated by this to the point where we are so fatigued, we're so stressed by Zoom. We have a term for it now. We call it Zoom fatigue. Student meetings. I mean, I don't know about every context, but in the US, we have required office hours that somehow during the pandemic, students actually started to use, which is amazing, right? Because we want them to use them, but they're using them because they're so stressed as students that, you know, they have genuine questions now that they're not able to get answered in a face-to-face environment. And so now the students are saying, hey, can I meet with you? Can I meet with you? I don't have this time when you have it, but can you meet at a different time? And so these are taking more of a toll on our time limits in a day. Technology issues, not just new technologies, but as we've seen already in this conference, the frozen screens and all the different things going on. And then our students are just as unfamiliar with things like Zoom as we are. And so we're having to Zoom into our meetings and the students are Zooming into them, but they're not familiar with what to do once they get there. And so we have to kind of walk them through those things. There's also bandwidth issues, right? So some people can't turn their monitors on because the bandwidth isn't enough in order to do video and audio and all the different things that we're asking them to do. And then there's the personal and family concerns that we are having ourselves, because now our professional lives have melded into our personal lives. So if we're having challenges at home, whatever those challenges might be, they now come into our professional lives as well. So kids running into our meetings and you know, making lots of noise, the background noises that happen outside your window when they're doing construction outside on the road outside my office window, which is right next to the road. All those different things, you know, now are part of our daily lives, and we have to adapt to those things. And then there's the health concerns, right? We're in a pandemic, so we're concerned about our health. We're concerned about our family's health. We're concerned about going to the grocery store because we don't know if we're going to get the virus when we go there. And then there's all these other issues that we might have health-wise that are not being addressed because of the virus, and it's so much more difficult to go to the hospital. And these are all weighing on our minds as we are also trying to be teachers. And then ultimately, as McMurtry points out, we are at a state of burnout. And at the end of every semester, teachers are like, I don't know if I can go on for another semester. But we do, because this is the profession we've chosen to do. Now, so students, now this is a big concern of mine because my research interests, I've got varied research interests, but one of those research interests has to do with student identity, specifically identities in transition. I work with mostly freshmen in college now. I have worked at multiple levels to include teaching ESL and to teaching high school and middle school and all those levels, but currently I am teaching those students who are in transition from high school to college. And so these are students who are really, really struggling because not only are they having to make the transition to being a college student, they are also having to make the transition to being a college student during a pandemic using online technologies. And that's tough. That's really difficult. Technology issues. WSU, one of the first things they had to deal with when we shifted abruptly, it was overnight basically, where we shifted to an online environment. was, do they have a computer? Do they even have access to the course sites? Because a lot of them didn't. So WSU started a loaner program where they said, if you need a computer to access your site, we have this donated bunch of computers, laptop computers that you can use. Bandwidth and Wi-Fi. A lot of students didn't have Wi-Fi at home, so the university had to work with communities across the state in order to establish Wi-Fi stations where students could go sit in their car and access Wi-Fi. These are things that we, in a face-to-face environment, we never would have thought about. We never would have thought, we need this. But now they know we need this, and they're planning to continue this, on and on afterwards. Interruptions. These are students who are, some of them are at home, and so they are sharing a bedroom, they're sharing a computer, and they're sharing Wi-Fi with their younger siblings. Or you might just have your family members walking in on you while you're trying to do a meeting with your professor or something of that. And so there's all these interruptions coming on, or it might be their pets coming and jumping in their laps while they're doing that. And maybe that's not a problem. A lot of people love to see pets on camera, but that's not the point. It's like, it can be often an interruption, especially if you have one of those really big dogs that tries to jump in your lap. And a lot of these students are dealing with just a lack of self-discipline. A lot of them have never had to do anything on their own, especially something so grandiose and difficult as learning online. And believe me, I've done tech support for online courses in a previous life, and that was a big issue with the students. Those that had the self-discipline did really well in the class. Those that don't really faltered, and they got behind, and then they got frustrated, and all those different things. And it's this big snowball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then leading to the mental health concerns and all that we'll talk about in a bit. And then you have work schedules. These are students who are they're working on top of going to college, and so they're trying to figure out, how do I manage getting my coursework done, showing up for my classes, and doing my work so that I can pay the bills, so I can pay my rent, buy food to put on my table, because maybe they're not living at home, or their parents are asking them to pay rent. And then again, the health concerns, kind of the same ones in many cases, but I've had students who broke their arm, so they couldn't type their papers because their arm was broken. They got COVID because they were taking care of their grandmother who had COVID. There are all these different things that have become obstacles for students. And so again, with my interest in student identity and transitions into that, I really wanted to have a way so that I could figure out what kinds of issues are students struggling with, that I can build into assignments, or build into assignments ways for them to process those things, those issues, in order for them to move on with all the rest of their lives and their educational lives. So I created a series of assignments, but I'm going to share 2 of those assignments with you. Or at least the word clouds from the content of their assignments, right? So the first one was called Your COVID Story, and this I did last fall, right? Students had just gone through this really, really challenging time where graduations were suspended. They couldn't do the things that they were used to doing. And there was a series of videos on YouTube and all of these different places where people were coping with the pandemic in lots of different ways. But I wanted to learn how my students were dealing with the pandemic. And so I had them do a story, and it really was a very simple assignment. I asked them to find a picture that represented a moment in time that for during the pandemic that represented a story of their life that impacted them in some specific way. And that was the assignment. I mean, there are the requirements that I have to have for the, for the outcomes that I'm addressing and everything else. But out of that, you can see from this word cloud here, and if you don't know how to do a word cloud, I'm happy to kind of give you directions on how to do it. It's very simple. There are lots of word cloud creators out there. A word cloud is simply a frequency. It basically, the words that are bigger show up more often in whatever piece of writing you have submitted as part of the word cloud. So so you'll see things like family and time. Now you obviously have going because it's a common word, so it shows up in text commonly. So you're not using that necessarily as a common theme, but family and lots of words related to family. Summer was a big thing, and that's actually becomes an issue, because what do you do during summer? Normally in between semesters you work or you do all these other things that now students were not able to do during the pandemic. And so there were a lot of things that these missed opportunities that students weren't able to get. And so that was out of that assignment. And then this last semester, I did an assignment a little bit differently, because we're 2 semesters away from the beginning of the pandemic. But there was a series of photographs that they're posted on an online site, right, of images of the pandemic. And then I had that as one option. And then there's a Netflix series called Homemade. And if you haven't watched it, some of them are good, some of them are not good. But the premise of the series Homemade is that these are short videos, usually 3 to 5 minutes, of people's experiences during the lockdown, showing the realities of what life was like for people during the lockdown. And you have some positive, some negative, some that are difficult to watch, some of them that are maybe a little risque and you don't want to watch, or you don't want your kids watching it or whatever. So there's a variety, but they're really short and you can make a choice of which ones you want to watch. So the students had an option of either using one of those photographs as a basis for a poem or a story or an essay or a proposal for a film of their life that would fit within a Netflix series. And you'll notice, of course, the word pandemic shows up really big because it's in the assignment, and therefore that's going to be something the students will use a lot. But you have COVID shows up as well. You have an issue or issues related to sports, and you have this word experience that comes up, and then isolation. A lot of different commonalities here that come out. And I want to share one of the things in here related to it, because it has to do with the use of sports during the pandemic. So there are, and it goes back to that dichotomy, right? So there's the negatives, right? And you couldn't have fans in the stands. So instead you have these cardboard cutouts that represent the fans. And sometimes they have like fan noise that represents that white noise that would happen during a regular game. But then there's the positive, right? This idea that even though there are these challenges that keep us from having a normal sports environment, it's important that we still go forward with it and do it, right? For various reasons, health reasons, maybe mental health reasons, all these different elements of that. But this dichotomy of, yes, it's difficult, but it's necessary. And so that was an important part of that as well. So our challenge is that we know certain things about the pandemic and how it's impacted us, right? we understand that based on these, what these students' responses are, the pandemic is a big point of discussion. It's a topic for discussion, right? And if you're teaching English, what are you looking for always? You're looking for topics of discussion, or topics for writing assignments, or topics for whatever. So having the students kind of drive topics and giving them an assignment that is fairly simple and just says, do this, and then taking that as a way to then incorporate the commonalities or the common topics that they discuss in those pieces of writing to build upon and bring in other additional conversations. So, there's the issue of isolation and togetherness. Again, there's this dichotomy here. Is it always negative that we're isolated and together with family? A lot of people have commented that they got so much closer to their family during the pandemic that how can they focus on the negatives when it's been such a positive thing for their family, right? But then you have kids whose family lives are not perfect, as Jessica pointed out, that when they're isolated with those family members, that's difficult, right? That's a challenge. That impacts their education, a lot of different things. So there's all these common topics. So how do we use them? Well, that's going to be up to us to decide what kinds of things do we want students to do? What outcomes do we have for our courses? How can we use these as jumping off points for discussion or writing or whatever our use is? Or even in the idea of translation as part of this conference, looking at student writing and then translating that, how does that translate into another culture or another context even, right? And so we can look at all those themes, but I think our challenge again is that nothing is the same as it was. And to expect that it's going to be the same is probably a little naive at this point. Well, I don't think we'll ever be able to go back to our previous sense of normal in our classrooms. And so what we need to do then is to really understand that we as teachers and our students are out of practice with what used to count as normal. And so as we look at going into returning to face-to-face mode, we need to say, okay, we need to acknowledge that and say, okay, what if it's not going to be exactly the same, what is it going to be like? So we need to have this transition into a new set of normal expectations. And most of all, we need to learn from the pandemic. We need to learn what worked, what didn't work in our online environments, and be able to apply that possibly to some kind of hybrid system, of what might be face-to-face plus something else, right? Some other supplementation. So we need to establish a new normal. Remedies, that part of the conference theme as well. And I don't have any specific remedies for you. I have lots of technologies that worked and didn't work for me. But I think we need to maybe look at this as strategies for moving forward. Because even if we move forward only an inch, we've moved forward, right? I'm in the process of trying to lose a little bit of weight, right? But mostly because I have a condition called gout, which is difficult and it's very painful. But one of the things that they ask you to do is to very slowly lose weight. And so it's that process of kind of losing things a little bit or gaining things a little bit at a time that I think we appreciate and we value more than if we have something that happens all at once, but then we backslide or go backwards on that. And in order to do this, I think we need to focus really on what we can change as opposed to what we can't change. You know, it again, going back to the best of times and the worst of times. The worst of times is not something we want to think about. But when we look at that and we say, okay, yeah, it was really bad, but how did we respond to that? And how did that impact us? You know, even though it was bad to start, you know, were there some good things that came out of it? And so looking at that, we need to think about what do we need to emphasize in a return to face-to-face or hybrid or whatever that looks like in the new normal. What kinds of things worked, what kind of things didn't work? Again, goes back to that. What supplemental tools can be used to a face-to-face in order to make it a hybrid that work well? And the value of a conference like this is that you get to see options and lots of different ways that different people have done that, you know, the whole online teaching thing. And I think that's an important aspect of conferences in general, is that professional development and the conversations that can happen while you go through that process of talking about and hashing about. I learned so much from conferences that I do. I'm on the Washington Association of ESL Teachers Conference board, and I just gave a workshop yesterday. I felt like I learned more from my participants in that workshop than maybe I shared with them, in a sense, right? Because with these conversations, I am working in a particular context. They're working in a particular context. And I was so appreciative of the various contexts represented in that workshop. And so taking advantage of those kind of professional development opportunities to learn various ways and approaches to deal with the different technologies that are available and how that might be useful or not within your context. Considering what lead-up assignments might help students process the pandemic and the challenges that they've faced in order to move forward. So if we look at psychology and the psychology of trauma, right? When someone's been through a traumatic event, the only way for them to move forward is to spend some time on that trauma and talking about it and talking about what made it traumatic and when dealing with those things. Now, do you want to do that in conversation, or is writing a more appropriate way of doing that? Do you want students to do it in a journal assignment where no one's going to read it, but they're still processing it? Or do you want to do it actually something that they share with others? I encourage you not to do that. But I mean, you know, but with the pandemic, it's a shared trauma. We've all dealt with it, right? So using the pandemic then as a jumping off point for various kinds of conversations to be had, I think is a really important thing, regardless of what tools you use to make that happen. So my final word, and this is for all of us, not just you all, but for me as well, is that we need to focus on what we can accomplish as we move forward. We need to concentrate on the best of times, but we need to draw from the worst of times. We need to learn what we can from that. Most importantly, we need to move forward, whether it's inches, feet, miles, or kilometers. We need to move forward in some way, in a way that makes sense. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you all. I'm happy to answer any questions, but however you want to do the question part of it, that's fine. I didn't see.
Thank you very much, Professor David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I have just a small question, Dr. Lina. Just, Doctor, are you satisfied with the way educational authorities administers or managed coronavirus problem for the past 2 years?
Mm-hmm. Am I surprised? Yes, very much so. Because there's so much of it. So like I teach in Pullman, Washington, and 8 miles away is Moscow, Idaho. Both towns have universities, and both universities have dealt with the virus and the way they do instruction differently. University of Idaho, they decided to do face-to-face classes all the way through the pandemic. Washington State University decided to do that all virtual, online. Now there are reasons for that. There's a lot of long process that went through it. WSU went through a series of basically meetings all through the summer, and they came back and said different things every single week. It was quite actually humorous in a way, because we would ask the same questions every week. They would answer them differently every week. And in the end, they came to, because WSU has so many campuses around the state of Washington, that we need to actually honor that and say, to include over close to where the epicenter was. We needed to basically, as a system, to say, let's do it all virtual or online. University of Idaho has basically 2 campuses, 3 if you include Boise, and they just said, you know what, we're going to take our chances. And there was a time where they had to go online for 2 weeks because they had an outbreak on campus. So yes, I'm surprised at the diversity of ways different universities have dealt with the virus. I appreciate the fact that WSU just decided to make a decision and go with it. And I think sometimes that's what you just have to do. You just make that authoritative decision and say, it's maybe not the most popular thing in the world, but we're going to go with it because it's in the best interest of the majority of the people. And so that's what we went with. But I had a conversation yesterday with another individual who was frustrated by that decision. You're not going to please everyone. And so I think that it's just a matter of what is going to be in the best interest of the people who you are serving as a university.
Thank you very much,
you.
Professor David.
You're welcome.
I would
Thank you
like
very much.
also to say that I agree with you that there is nothing normal nowadays, and we truly need to contemplate and look for solutions. Thank you
Right.
for talking about the various challenges, effects of Corona on education, which goes really in accordance with what Professor Jessica discussed in some points. Thank you for that. I also I appreciate talking about teachers' struggles, because I reckon that we could all relate to this, as well as our students. Relating to this, I think there is a question by Professor Yusuf Omar on the text chat. He's asking regarding the technological issues that students struggle with. If you would like to answer.
Let me see where. Try to find the question here real quick. Dr. Yusuf, do you want to just ask your question so that I can't seem to find it for some reason?
Yeah, Prof. David, sorry, Lina, for interruption. So first, we'd like to thank you for accepting our invitation, and thank you for the nice presentation, informative presentation. But as far as I know that American is basing technology from the primary school. So American students actually are aware of the technology when they get to university. So you mentioned, so there are some technological issues that students struggle with. So do you mean that the American students or overseas students? So if they are American, what kind of technological issues that the American students encounter while they study at the university?
That's a wonderful question, and it's actually both. We have a lot of, and I have colleagues who've had students that are in China or other countries, and one of the, the big challenge there is not just access to computers, but time zones, right? And dealing with, so if your class is scheduled at 9 a.m. US time, then that means you have to pay attention to the fact that when is that class in your time zone? And that might actually conflict with a lot of other things going on. If your class is in the afternoon and you're talking about China, it might be the middle of the night when they have to log on. And so that was actually one of the biggest concerns for teachers who have students in other countries at the university level. I know with like the ESL programs, they just adapt to, kind of happy medium sort of for the different class times. But, for us, our schedules are determined by, a higher entity beyond our programs a lot of times. And so we have to just kind of adjust. What we've done at the university is said, okay, so we have to record all Zoom sessions, and students need to have access to those recordings so that they can get the content from the class. But students don't have to necessarily be, they're not counted off. There's no points deducted for not attending at the time that the class meets. And that's been a big concern for students overseas. It is true that most US students grow up with technology, but it's not completely true that all communities have equal access. So I live in a town west of Colfax, Washington, which is about 45 minutes drive from where I work. And we're a very small community, about 300 people in the community. And surprisingly, in town, we have pretty good access to Wi-Fi, right? Or to reliable internet. But if you go 2 miles out of town, you don't have that same access. So if you are teaching like elementary children, and your students are living out in the outskirts of town, a couple miles out, they're not necessarily going to have good Wi-Fi access or good access to computers. And so as teachers, we have to be very, very conscious of that and understand what is the lowest common denominator, and then design your class so that it's not using the highest of technology that's out there. Well, there's a lot of really good technologies available to us. But do we need to use all of those technologies? And some of those technologies cost money for the students, right? I have become over the years, because I've been a student many years as well. I really do my best to keep the cost down for my students in terms of textbooks and whatever technologies I'm actually asking them to use. And so if the technology people that have created it are going to charge money for it, even if it's $25 a month or $25 for a semester, that's something extra the students hadn't counted on. And that, that can be a problem for some of them. So yeah, there's just a ton that needs to be taken into account. It's overwhelming. I mean, to the point as teachers. So really you just have to kind of say, I'm not going to try to integrate every single technology into my class. I'm going to take what works within what's free for the students, right? So I use what's available within the learning management system, which is Canvas, rather than trying to go outside of Canvas all the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you much,
Yes, Dr. Lena.
Thank you very much. It was really inspiring what you did with your students in helping them to express, and talk about their experiences. Thank you. And now I would like to move on and invite our third distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Kangmu Lee Lim. He is going to tell us more about his presentation regarding thinking education through creative and critical writing. The mic is with you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate, especially my friend, Dr. Omar. I'm so glad to meet you. Thank you. I'm really sleepy in South Korea right now. Time is really daunting, challenging, but I'm so happy to be here and talk about my personal perspective from pandemic in South Korea from last year up until this semester. I'm wrapping up the semester in this week, and then I will summarize you know, our topic, especially reality experiences, and move on to challenges, and the last, remedies, or some suggestion that I experienced to you. And in last year, in spring semester, my 2 classes were canceled, and I was really surprised. The night class was canceled, and one special class for high school students were canceled. So I had to record all classes. In the fall semester, I got back 4 classes as usual, but I had to record all classes, and plus one course I had to be there and have a face-to-face class with screen wall and wearing mask. So it was really a daunting experience. In this year, in spring semester, my 2 classes were started with Zoom, which is really another daunting experience for me. I got some neck pain from this semester, and it's really new for me. I've been teaching 24 years already, but this is really new experience. That's overall experience of the pandemic, and I will list some challenges from my experience. First, it's really difficult to remember the students' name and faces. As an educator, my one of philosophy is remembering their faces and names, but it's really difficult. And number 2, yes, I mentioned about my neck pain from this semester. I'm fine, this semester, but this week. But last week I got a little bit strong, yes, a pain. And 3, due to lack of speaking communication, it causes some hoarse voices, even for me, and sometimes I feel low motivation to teach, as well as probably the students feel in that way. And 4, usually I have some team project in 2 classes, but it's really difficult to have a team project as to the project-based class. And of course, a lack of verbal communication and difficult to listening to students due to wearing mask and screen wall, and also some technical error. Yes, they are really in different situation. So next, it's really difficult to understand student without non-verbal expressions. Sometimes through Zoom, no face, half face, or some animation characters instead of their face, and sometimes, you know, very nice vacation backdrop, and also sometimes funny costume of their faces, so that it's a big distraction for me to focus on. And so those are really kind of daunting experience for me. And I was really pondering about, you know, what kind of remedy can I can do for my student under this kind of pandemic. And first, I really try to focus on their assignment, to read more carefully and to give more detailed feedback. And so additionally, I gave a little more assignment. For example, audio recording or visual presentation based on their paper assignment. So I really, I started to notice students prefer audio assignment to visual assignment. So after 1 year of you know, pandemic experience, I feel like I became a radio disc jockey. And so because I listen to students' audio assignment and then understand their voices instead of faces. So my job, I feel like I'm more radio caster or a radio announcer instead of professor or teacher. And okay, let's move on to the second point. And also I try to spend more time on students' well-being. You know, usually it's quick to check on attendance of students, but somehow in this time, I spend more time on students' name. For example, how are you? You know, Jessica, this morning, how have you been? I tend to increase my greeting time. So it gave me more comfort to understand students' situation. So that's a kind of new style or new remedy for my experience. And next, since I'm teaching more of writing classes and creating content class, so luckily my creative writing courses help student and even for me, because through writing, I can understand their difficulties, their concern, their sometimes mental depression. So I tend to carefully read their writing more, and sometimes I gave some other advices, not quite much academic you know, devices, more of health and just well-being of student. That's very different compared to previous years before the pandemic. And also somehow I try to make more good rapport before starting my main lesson, because they are scattered around in South Korea and usually Seoul or around province, but they don't know. They don't know each other because even though they are freshmen, they couldn't be on campus. They don't know. And I never met them. Yeah, last year and this year. So we are all knew each other. So I spend more time making rapport. Yes, introducing each other a little bit more, almost every week. Even though they introduce each other, they feel still detached a little bit. Somehow, it's the feeling of spacing out each other. So, but at the end of a semester, I checked their degree of rapport, and they felt a little bit, closer each other. But I think it is not that comparable of having the real class, which is face to face. And number two, as I mentioned before, try to understand students' situation, surrounding, especially their digital devices, the situation. Usually in here, IT is pretty strong in South Korea, but a few students, they couldn't get, the cam and some other issue. So I try to check their situation every week before starting classes. And usually I have around 40 students for 2 classes. I tend to use more small group discussions, which is much better for language-wise and discussion-wise, and get creative ideas-wise. And so I think it's really a daunting experience of using Zoom, but using small discussion, that's really helpful. So I try to increase more time of small group discussion and session. And the last, I try to give more psychological advice, comments on sometimes their habit of exercise and sometimes on their diet and health somehow. So compared to 2 years ago, before pandemic, I hardly mention about these things. It's very trivial, minor topic, but since the corona pandemic, I tend to talk more on this issue. And also, as a teacher, as a professor, I'm also suffering from this kind of issue, not only for students, but also for me. So I take care of myself. I'm trying. For example, take a walk regularly every day, and also take a photo every day, and listening to music more, and even putting some flowers, roses on my desk. Yeah, which is really, I hardly did, but somehow I really try to console me as a teacher and professor also. It's really important for teachers' health. And but I felt the fragile mind even for me. So that's my really a bit concern. Well, I just briefly went through the reality and challenges and some remedies of personal perspective, and I would like to yes, wrap up my night session. Thank you for inviting me, especially Dr. Omar. I'm so glad to meet you and everybody uh, in Africa and in Europe. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Lim. Thank you. I would like you to know one thing, that you're not only the person who suffered from physical discomfort, we also suffered from this in one way or another. And I'd like to thank you for shedding light on students' needs, trying to come up with remedies to help them in their assignments to adapt in such times. Thank you. And also I appreciate suggesting that as teachers, we should take care of ourselves, try to adapt also as well with our students. Thank you very much. And now,
دكتور لينا عيدي تقديم بس أعطي نبذة عن الدكتور عيدي أعطي نبذة عنه في آخر كلمته لو سمحتي بس إذا تكرمتي دكتور.
Professor Lim, I would like to express my apology. I may forgot to introduce you. Professor Lim works in Hanyang Women's University. He's the Chief Creative Officer at YUHU. He's the former president of Mid-Missouri chapter at United Nations Association of the United States of America. It has been a pleasure to have you here with us, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and personal experience with us. Thank you. And now I would like to move to our last but not least distinguished keynote speaker in this conference, Professor Stephen Benefits. He is an educational consultant and a senior instructor. He's going also to tell us more about education. The future is now. And now, Professor Stephen, the mic is with you. Looking forward to listening to this.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Great, great. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Omar, for this opportunity to speak at your conference, and greetings, excuse me, greetings from Tripoli, Libya, to all the conference delegates. Before I proceed, I would like to acknowledge the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education professors, Dr. Betty Chandy, Dr. Bobby Kershan, and Dr. Donna Murdoch for their work on online teaching and blended learning, for which this speech is based. Also, edX, which provided the platform for the course Introduction to Online Teaching and Blended Learning, which I took as part of my continuing professional education. Let me preface this talk by saying that education knows no borders. It knows no race, no color, no creed. Education is not only a fundamental human right, but also an enabling right with a direct impact on the realization of all other human rights, according to the United Nations. Without education, global societies will cease as a cohesive group. In other words, when the education system collapses, peaceful, prosperous, and productive societies cannot be sustained. Therefore, we as educators, perhaps reluctant guardians of humanity, whether we know it or not, must do our part to be prepared for what the future holds. Thus, the topic of my talk today is education. The future is now. Before I begin, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. My given name is Stephen Benavides, originally from Hawaii, but currently living and working in Tripoli, Libya as an educational consultant privately and a senior instructor at Waha Oil Company Training Department, which is, by the way, the first Cambridge test center here, known as LY001. My boss said I should mention this. With that in mind, I'm also an examiner for 4 international recognized exams, including IELTS. I also teach occupational English to medical doctors, known as the OET. As for my education, I have a master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages. However, my BA is in economics and political science with a minor in computer science. Teaching started for me as an undergraduate in my first year. I was instructing Japanese students in conversational English. Then later I taught a freshman level course in my senior year of college. Since then, I have worked and taught a variety of subjects such as, but not limited to, driving, cooking, legal research, medicine, construction, aviation. I even taught power and desalination principles at a power plant in Saudi Arabia in the early 80s. In fact, I've taught in Asia and the Middle East, as well as the United States. By now, you must be saying to yourself, how old is this guy? Well, let's just say that I'm not quite a fossil yet, and leave it at that. I do want to say finally that the reason I teach ESL now is because all my prior experiences, it allows me to communicate to my students no matter what their profession is. Well, enough said about me, and on to the topic of my speech. It was stated to me that I could talk about anything, like my experience in teaching, for example. But I thought that I would talk about something more relevant to a global audience. Thus my topic, education, the future is now. This was chosen because of what has and is happening to us all at the moment. That is the COVID-19 crisis and how it has and will impact the way we teach. But some background first. You know, it was stated to me once that to understand the future, you must, or you should, look at the past first. When I first attended school, teachers used blackboards and chalk. In fact, they were green boards. And when I asked about that, the response was that students used to use individual pieces of slate rock because of its durability and its dark flat surface, which were still used in America and Europe at the end of the 18th century, according to the Resilient Educator website. But the use of boards goes way back to ancient times. Clay tablets, for instance, were used in Babylonia and Sumeria. I mentioned this to illustrate how far we have come. I'm a student of the 20th century. We are now, of course, in the 21st century. But I remember teachers using flashcards, film strips, reels, mimeograph sheets, and typewriters. Then the calculator was added to the classroom, which revolutionized the way math and science were taught. Next came the mag card typewriter, and the word processor soon followed. I remember as a young boy seeing my first computer at a local college near my house. It was huge. It took up a space of a long rectangular building, which took me a minute and a half to walk its length. I thought how wonderful that was, but not practical for a classroom. And now we have smartphones that have more computing power and process information at lightning speed. In fact, our laptops and phones today have more power than the astronauts had for the Apollo moon landing. Then what comes to mind is the Chinese adage, which says, "May you live in interesting times." It strikes home to me as I have witnessed so many technological changes. Currently, we have a range of devices and tools at our disposal to teach. And even those are evolving, changing, and some already become are becoming obsolete. Take the progression of the blackboard, for instance, which was followed by the whiteboard. Goodbye chalk. I was happy for that. To what is called the smartboard with its multi-functions. And even that may soon be replaced with a currently available small projector device that can be used on any surface, indoors or out, with many of the same features as a smartboard, but at the fraction of a cost. As a result, teachers need to be equipped or need to equip themselves for the digital competencies that they hope to develop in their students. This is the future. The future is now. With that in mind, the COVID-19 situation has forced us to revisit the role of the teacher in the classroom. According to the Graduate School of Education at Penn University, a traditional view of the teacher's role is the giver of knowledge. Teachers share knowledge with students on a particular subject through lessons that build on their prior knowledge and then moves them towards a deeper understanding of the subject. Today, these expectations are being challenged. The fundamental premise of teachers as the conduit of knowledge is no longer valid. In recent years, the cliche has been, moving from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side, have emerged to illustrate the awareness of the changes that are happening, focusing the role of the teacher as more of a facilitator, a guide, a mentor, and a coach, for example. This is an important part of the current issue, but it needs to go deeper than that. Today, digital age, the teacher's responsibility goes way beyond imparting just the basic reading, writing, math, and science. Teachers need to prepare students with the skills, knowledge, and understanding that they will need to succeed in our highly technological and information-based society. These skills are generally referred to as the 21st century skills, which includes the ability to think critically, make informed judgments, solve complex problems, engage in creative thinking, complex communication, and collaborative using the information in innovative ways. Consider our rapidly changing society, the pace at which knowledge is created and built upon, the relenting increase of technology all around us, and the increasing effects of globalization. We know that in today's world, learning does not stop with formal education. Now more than ever, learning is a lifelong pursuit for all of us. This means that as educators, one of the most important things we need to teach our learners is how to teach themselves. We need to help our students to develop the capability to learn and grow and become better at being independent. And we need to help them develop learning and innovation skills that they can use in the future. In other words, we need to educate them now to enhance the learner's ability to function well in the future in this rapidly changing world. The teacher's role in the classroom that seeks to impart the 21st century skills and the one that adopts deeper learning approaches is different from what we have known in the traditional classroom. This role changes from that of an expert providing knowledge to being the facilitator in a learning environment that helps students to engage in creative inquiry while developing digital literacy. Teachers need to be the guides, the mentors who model responsible global citizenship and help their students develop lifelong learning skills by helping students to set their own goals, control their own learning directions. With the constant change in technology and technological tools, teachers and other educators are continually expected to both be familiar with the latest trends in technology as well as be adept in using a variety of tools and approaches in their practice. Teachers can use technology in many ways. Inside the classroom and during the classroom hours, technology can be used for research, presentation, exploration. Some classrooms are using virtual reality programs to visit different parts of the world in the present or even in the past. Or how about underwater or even in outer space from their classroom? May we live definitely, excuse me, in interesting times. Indeed, outside the classroom, teachers can use the technology to record keep, grade, attendance, professional correspondence, communication with parents, networking, and such. There are whole industries dedicated to providing software for the management of schools that allows students, parents, school staff, as well as educators to access a range of information. Teachers can also use technology to bridge the formal and informal spaces for their students in the class through group projects, extend homework assignments, collaborative writing, and creating. These changes mean that the role of the teacher is continually changing and evolving differently from the kinds of teaching and learning that we used in the traditional classroom. You might have noticed that traditionally, schools are not set out to provide authentic learning experience. A big challenge that schools face is to be able to bridge the gap between academic knowledge and the broader community. Authentic learning prepares the student with skills and knowledge they need to be successful, both in higher education as well as being part of the future workforce. However, due to a rigid curriculum and the content standards or teacher accountability, regimented schedules, and achievement testing, all have fostered a culture of teaching to the test rather than promoting authentic learning environments. This must change if we want our students to be successful in the world to come. As teachers and educators, we must design our classrooms to shift from traditional practices to continually updating standards. Most standards are written in a clear and consistent manner to align with college or other higher education and workplace expectations. And if they are not, they should be. Okay, this is intended to prepare the students to participate effectively in a global economy and society. As teachers, when you design your learning environment, it's extremely important to keep these standards in mind and carefully consider the issues that your students and learners will face as you tailor their learning experiences. In the United States, for instance, standards like the Common Core State Standards for Technology are aligned to bring school systems into the new century with tech-savvy students in mind. Earlier, students were expected to do research papers by using books, references, library sources, and such sources that were considered credible. But today, students go to the internet for most of their research. Therefore, as teachers, we need to understand the experience of students in their everyday life and use that to teach within the classroom. Digital technology has changed the way in which students operate in their lives. With access to smartphones, digital cameras, tablets, and other devices, Students record their day-to-day activity, edit, remix, and share them with their peers. As teachers, then, we must find ways to integrate these practices into the classroom and harness the power of technology for creating specialized learning environments. I do, however, understand that there will be obstacles to overcome. There are many roadblocks to be able to do this in the classroom, including lack of resources, as the previous speaker from the United States said, within school buildings, or limitations of existing resources, or need for additional software or hardware, different student abilities, just to name a few. There are so many, there are also policies in place which prevent teachers from being able to use the available technology to its fullest potential. You may also have to answer to parents who may not see the importance of these technologies within the classroom. Above all, the adequate support that teachers need to be able to facilitate technology use in school may be missing. Another point to consider is that educators may not have access to the technology, or technology coaches, for example, or a community of practice or professional development opportunities on site. But many innovative educators, and I hope I include myself in this category, do not let these setbacks discourage us from trying out new things in our classroom, as there are many ways to overcome some of these roadblocks. Such teachers gather information online from government grants, foundations, and companies that provide funding for schools, for example. Take the Association of Children Education International, or Education International, another group, or the Global Partnership for Education, Plan International, Save the Children, UNESCO, UNICEF, even the Gates Foundation, which provides computers to African schools. And there are many others if you are willing to take the time and look. With these assets, we can cobble together the resources that we can use in our classrooms. Professional development and teacher training have a very important role to play in creating student-centered opportunities to foster deeper learning activities. Teachers need to design and implement collaborative, interdisciplinary projects that allow students to work together and share responsibility and expertise. Students should be given the opportunity to reflect, create, produce, demonstrate, share, and take ownership of their learning. This is the future of education. The use of online technologies can enable teachers to transform their learning environment into powerful learning spaces. But this implies that policies, administration, and leadership need to support teachers in developing the competency needed that we can ensure student readiness for the 21st century. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. I would like to end with what Professor Stephen said earlier, that education has no border. And indeed, it has no border. And our conference and our gathering here is a concrete example of this. Before returning back the mic to Dr. Abdulraouf.
Discussion, yeah, Dr. Lina, discussion. We will have discussion time, if you don't mind.
Yes, Dr. Majid, just give me the chance. I said before giving the mic to Dr. Abdulraouf, before the discussion, I would like to go back to the text chat, in which there is a question, I assume by Professor Yusuf Omar, regarding, this is for Professor Lim. If you're with us, Professor. Professor Lim, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, There's a question by Professor Yusuf. He is asking you, what is the difference in teaching creative writing between the States and South Korea?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. And as a EFL student and some ESL student in South Korea, actually there is no difference between American creative writing in South Korea, because I think it is same style, same pattern. But in South Korea, we have some advanced students and intermediate, lots of intermediate, and the beginner students. So I think basically there is no difference, only the language barrier. But I really had a good experience in University of Missouri, where I met Dr. Omar. And personally, I'm really into writing, even in Korean writing. So even though it's really difficult to teach creative writing in South Korea, but it's my really ongoing experience. So I just applied same model of US that I learned into Korean situation. So I'm just, there to challenge, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lim. This is a request from our colleague, Dr. Musallami. He's asking if you could kindly write your email on the chat. He's obviously interested in your area of expertise, if it's possible. Okay, all participants, dear colleagues, if you, the floor is open for discussion. If you would like to ask any of our keynote speakers, please go ahead. Or you could write your question on the text chat. Yes, Dr. Kamal.
Yes, please. I have a question. Thank you all for your useful presentations. They are all beneficiary for us. I have a specific question. As you said in all of your presentations, that there are lots of challenges during the pandemic, but I have a specific question concerning one part of the process in general, which is concerning assessment and evaluation. Dr. Lim, as you said, you passed through many challenges at all of the levels, but my specific question is how do you deal, or how did you tackle the issue of online testing, especially cheating between students? So how do you tackle this problem, or how do you solve the problem or the problems that result from online tests? This is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. I think, can I go first?
Yeah, first, Professor,
yes.
Go ahead.
Actually, my class is more of a writing class, and also I'm teaching tourism English too. So my usual test based on presentation. So usually I use rubric instead of multiple choice test. So I don't have any cheating issue, because I usually evaluate their more qualitative aspects rather than choosing the multiple answers. So let them record their voice and presentation, and if they send their file, plus their script, I evaluate them according to my rubric about presentation and the script. So in previous years, I had no problem of cheating. Yes, and I think my evaluation was pretty acceptable for students. I don't have many complaints from students. So I'm really away from multi choices of tests into more qualitative evaluation style because of my characteristics of classes, which is writing. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Professor Lim. Professor Stephen, would you like to tell us more from your experience? How do you deal with cheating when you assess students in their exams, perhaps?
Well, to tell you the truth, I really don't come across that. Initially, when I first got here, cheating was something of a national sport in class. But as we got on in the classroom, it became more of a pride issue that I don't cheat and that I try to accomplish or learn what I'm there for. And since that initial time that I was here, and I've been here in 8 years now, I very rarely see cheating. I'm sorry, I don't experience it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Stephen. Perhaps we could hear from Professor David. Could you tell us your
Yeah,
experience?
I think one of the things that you can do to kind of put cheating as a less popular thing to do is really to focus on the process more than the product. When you are focused so much on the product itself, which is the test or whatever, students feel that certain pressure there. But if you're focused on, okay, so here's the process that we're going to engage in, and really you're going to be evaluated at the end of the process. But in the meantime, you're going to be given lots of feedback along the way in order to get to that point where you are more proficient or showing proficiency. I think that you have less inclination by people to cheat, because then there's not that pressure. There's not a test pressure. The test pressure, I think, actually comes primarily from heavily weighted multiple choice tests, and that's where you end up with that kind of decision-making process where it's like, okay, I need to pass this test, therefore I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in order to do that. And if one of those variables is cheating, then then you have an issue. But if when you're telling students, hey, we're going to engage in the process of learning how to do this and to become proficient, understanding that even published writers still have work to do on the things that they get published, that takes a little bit of pressure off the students. So.
Thank you very much, Professor David. Professor Jessica, are you with us?
I only have a few short things to say, and that is that I teach upper level courses where most of our work is writing assignments. So you tend to see less cheating with that. But what I've seen people do who teach more freshman, sophomore classes, which here in the United States are usually larger classes and are more likely to be graded with an online or, with a true false, multiple choice testing method, is that they give students a time limit to complete the test. And that way they can't stop and go back through their textbook and look everything up. So they add a time limit that decreases some of that cheating. And the tests go through Zoom, and they have ways to, I didn't mean Zoom, I meant like Canvas or Blackboard, those platforms, and they have a way of setting them up so that they're in a pool of questions so that everyone isn't asked the same thing. So that's what I have seen done.
Thank you very much, Professor Jessica. Anyone else would like to ask our distinguished keynote speakers? Anything else? Any comment?
Yes, Dr. Lina.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Jihad, our colleague from Gaza.
Thank you. I'd like to add a comment. The hero or the heroine, I'm not sure whether COVID-19, whether we call it hero or the heroine, is the hero of the stage, the enemy of the stage. And I do agree with all the speakers. This enemy must not stop teaching and learning a process. But I noticed that Dr. Martin and Stephanie focus on the role of teacher and his students. And I think this is not enough to stand in the face of that enemy. We need collaboration. By the way, all the countries were unprepared, not only the USA. And the USA is lucky, but what about other countries? So there's a need to cooperate with the organization, the UN, with UNESCO. Teachers alone is not, or local organization is not enough as a remedy for that virus. So we should have plans, universal plans, because COVID-19 is universal. So we have plans, universal plans, and we should have plans also for the unknown coming electronic or biological viruses. Yes, but teachers alone to keep struggling like Dr. Lim, he burned himself. He has pain in every organ of his body. This is not, enough. Yeah, thank you.
Can I express, there was another question in the chat that I wanted to address as well as this. So both of them are kind of related. It's really easy for us to get overwhelmed by all the things that we have to deal with. And so, the oh my part of my presentation title is just really an expression of kind of that exasperation or being overwhelmed, right? So it's really easy to get overwhelmed, and I think that goes back to Dr. Masalami, your question, your concern. I totally agree. We need to be very, very very concerned about the global economy and the global state of education. And I appreciate conferences like this that are more focused on what can we do as a world to solve the problems, as opposed to what can we do just in a local environment. And so I think this is a first step in that process. But there's so much more that we have to address as we move forward in this. And I think my goal is not to to address all of those things. Again, it's just we can work with what we can work with, but there are things that are going to be out of our control.
Thank you, Professor David. Indeed, I agree with you and with Dr. Jihad. A universal plan is required, namely if things could deteriorate in the future. Let us hear more from our host, Democratic Arabic Center. Please, the mic is with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask a little question about the alternatives used in countrysides in developed countries for people who can't afford internet connection, and other technologies. as for some Arabic countries, they used the national television to broadcast educational content. So it's an experience that doesn't allow the evaluation of the students just at the end of the term, of course. So they gather a lot of lessons to revise and to learn. I don't know about the developed countries, what solution they deploy in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I cannot recall your name, but you are our host. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. Professor Jessica, would like to
Dr.
add
Karim,
something?
yeah, Dr. Alina. Dr.
My apology, Dr. Karim, my apology.
Yeah, Vice President of the Arab Democratic Center. We're proud of him. He's done a great job in this conference.
My honor to be here with you all. Let's listen to, I think Professor Jessica wanted to say something. The mic is open.
I only want to make a short general comment, and that is that I think that if you understand Americans, specifically people from the United States, they feel so separate from the rest of the world. We really only have two neighbors, Canada and Mexico. And I think we feel very separate. And I think that this coronavirus was very influential because they begin to understand that what happens in China matters. That not only did we shut our borders to other people, but other people shut our borders to the United States. And I'm just wondering if this will, in the long term, have any influence on things like wars and other interactions, because maybe it will humanize their sense of at least for the United States, how we are all interconnected and what happens to one happens to all. It is a world problem. So yes, I very much agree with the other speakers, but just wanted to say that.
Excuse me, Dr.
Go ahead, Dr. Majid.
Yes, I just have a small comment, like just like we needed a virus to overcome this coronavirus, and all the world tried level best to reach to the vaccine as soon as possible, and just nations all over the world have a really serious competition who will get the magic stick first and overcome and get this coronavirus. And we have witnessed how stingy and selfish there were. Some countries just wanted to give this vaccine for their nation, avoiding other people. Just in education, we need this magic stick. So I guess there should be a universal plans for overcoming this coronavirus. There should be like how ministry, the World Organization, Health Organization tried to have some plans for overcoming coronavirus. We, all the educators all over the world, should have an international forum to build a new forum for the future on how to overcome certain supposed pandemic or whatever obstacles can come in between. We don't have to be selfish. Like maybe developed countries who have a very strong infrastructure, educational infrastructure, will be able to face whatever challenges. But what about poor third world countries? What about certain countries in Africa? We should really give priority for ourselves, but we don't have to just think of others. Like our famous poet later, Mahmoud Darwish, said, before you think of your breakfast, think of the food of the pigeons and the birds in the morning. Maybe you deserve to think of yourself, but well, I guess all the international community should have an organization that work together hand in hand in order to build a future strategy for overcoming whatever obstacles can come on the front of the path of education all over the world, because this will be reflected and have consequences on the world in all levels. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Majid. I think that we all agree with you that collaboration, as Professor Stephen typed, that collaboration on global level is necessary and is required. And having an academic networking, a social networking is a good suggestion. Perhaps, you know, each university could begin with having another networking with another university and so on. This is a good suggestion. Thank you very much. Another comment by our colleague from Gaza, Dr. Nashat Al-Masri. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank. Just give me a second. Hello, everyone.
We can hear you clearly, Dr. Nashat. Okay, till Dr. Nashat comes back to us. Anyone else would like to ask our keynote speakers? Any comments?
I really want to say to highlight the importance of studying the student's dilemma that we're living in. We've our personal but students' experiences. I believe that in certain areas, the students faced a difficulty, not only in the problem. Having a mobile phone that could get into the internet is another huge problem. So what we need is to direct our attention to the students' needs and to the students' let's say infrastructure of the country, whether it is in the university or the school, or I know places, and I know personally, I know people who do not have a smartphone in the whole house. Nobody has a smartphone. So how could a child attend a virtual classroom via the internet without having a smartphone, a computer, or anything like that in the house? And sometimes even TVs. They don't have TVs in the house. I know people who live with this, and I know that they pass the whole year without attending any kind of lectures. We need to direct our attention to those people who suffer not only from COVID-19, but from not having the ability to meet their teachers even virtually. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nashat. We also agree with you regarding the technological problems and challenges. Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to make a comment or a question?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lena. Thank you.
If I may just say one thing, Dr. Majid, I would like immensely to thank our keynote speakers, Professor Jessica, Professor David, Professor Lim, and Professor Stephen, for sharing their insights, perceptions, and experiences with us, and for their valuable information in their area of expertise. And I also would like to thank all the participants for joining us today, hoping that you benefited from this gathering, and hopefully that we could see you in other sessions. Thank you very much. It was my honor to be here with you all. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Majid.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for your valuable time. We're grateful to have such a distinguished, honorable guest, and we here from Palestine and we have colleagues at Al-Quds Open University. We assure you that we are looking forward to have more international collaboration in educational levels, just to exchange our experiences. Well, I guess Dr. Karim has something to say regarding the speech, which was supposed to be by University of Tripoli, and then we'll close this meeting. I hope Professor Abdul Rauf is with us. Professor Abdul Rauf is with us. دكتور كريم carry on please.
نعم. ايش دكتور ماجد؟
هاي الدكتور كريم بس بدي اعمل مداخله بخصوص كلمه جامعه طرابلس ثم نختتم الاجتماع. دكتور كريم yes please carry on.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are sorry to know that he is not able to tell us his word because of problems he had. The electricity is not available at this time. The network stations are not working, so they are not here with us. We are sorry, but we will be happy and honored to have him tomorrow to say his word before the beginning of the second day. Inshallah, we are willing to see him tomorrow for listen to his word and to know him more. Thank you very much. I give you back the
Thank
word.
you, Dr. Karim. Thank you so much, everybody. I would like to remind all of you that tomorrow we have one keynote speakers, Professor Prakash Kona, in the literary theory, got his PhD from University of Mississippi, United States of America, a strong supporter to the Palestinian cause, and he's really he would give, he would love to share us his knowledge in his speech, and we'll have 3 sessions tomorrow. Each session will have, first session will have 4 papers, the second session will have 3 papers, and the third session will have also 3 papers. Thank you so much for being with us today. دكتور عبد الرؤوف تفضل اختتم الجلسة.
طيب السلام عليكم. أشكر جميع المتحدثين الذين أسهموا في إثراء هذه الجلسة القيمة، سواء من المشاركين المتحدثين أو المناقشين الذين أثروا هذا اللقاء، وإن شاء الله.
Professor Abdurrauf Ikhrevish is giving you his warmest regards, thanking you for your valuable speeches in this very beautiful evening. تفضل أكمل دكتور.
ونكمل إن شاء الله في الجلسات القادمة مع متحدثين آخرين، وتصبحون على خير.
And inshallah in the next session we'll have other speakers. في نهاية الاجتماع grateful to Dr. Suhaib who's done a valuable efforts. We never heard his speech today, but I'm sure he's the one behind all this successful event. Thank you so much.
Wish him a rapid, quick recovery from Corona is attempted too.
I see. May God bless him and may God bless you all. Grateful to you, Dr. Suhaib, and everybody understands what kind of efforts you are doing, and we're always grateful to you and wish you all the best. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your patience. We've been sitting talking to each other for 4 hours, and grateful to Jerusalem, to wonderful Dr. Lina Omar, who administrated the keynote speaker. She's just the Dome of the Rock is behind her. If she opens the window of her room, you can see the Dome of the Rock, and inshallah everybody will meet in Bab al-Amud, in the middle of Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Palestine. Thank you so much. Good night.
شكرا وتصبحون على خير والى اللقاء.
تصبحوا على خير، اللقاء غدا ان شاء الله. يعطيكم الف عافيه.
في امان الله، في امان الله. Thank you.
يعطيكم العافيه.
الله يعافيك.
مع السلامه.